Thank you. Would everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, thank you. So just a few housekeeping notes because one of our selectmen is participating remotely. We will be asking for voice votes so that everybody can hear everything that's going on. Our first item agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from October 5th. So may I have a motion on the floor for that, please?
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 5th.
Okay, thank you.
Second the motion.
And seconded by Greg. Is there any further discussion before we take a voice vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have to announce? Yeah.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blen?
Abstain.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries 4-0-1. I don't believe there's anybody here for public comment, so we're going to jump right into our agenda items. And the first item on our agenda is an appointment to the zoning board. We'd like to welcome Barbara Burry. Is that the way you pronounce your name? Come on up front. And she received a glowing letter from Mr. Belo, and apparently you have been a former ZBA appointee.
Yes.
So welcome back. Thank you
Yes.
so much. And could you just tell us and the audience listening a little bit about yourself and why you decided to come back?
A little about myself. I'm a former software engineer turned machinery technician, and now I'm a tech educator. And I was on the zoning board years ago, and got too busy with work and things, and was looking for people to fill in. But now I have a little more time, and want to get back involved in doing things with the community.
So you're a glutton for punishment, apparently. All right, that's excellent, excellent. Well, as I said, you came with glowing recommendations, and we want to thank you so much for continuing to share your talents with the town and offering your services to us. We very much appreciate your expertise. Does the board have any questions that they'd like to ask, Ms. Burry?
I just also want to thank you, Barbara, for stepping up and taking care of all the work. Some of the work that we have to do is really hard to find good volunteers, and so we really appreciate you coming up and stepping up. Thank you.
Yes. So we have
You
your...
say something?
Sure, Dawn, go ahead.
Thank you, Barbara, for coming back. I'm on the ZBA, and we need the female touch.
I know. What's D, chopped liver? So,
I'm talking in voting.
all right, okay. So anyway, so we have your appointment that's already been approved and signed, and I believe you'll just have to take an oath of office. And so you can do that at any time. You can stop by and have that done with the town clerk's office. So welcome again, and thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Barbara.
righty.
Thank you.
You have a good night. Okay. Oh, our pleasure. Our next agenda item is a donation acceptance by Mr. Poliquin Welding and Fabrication. Mark, can I lob this to you and just briefly tell us what lovely, generous thing our former selectman has donated to the town?
Yes. He usually annually repairs the flagpole at Town Hall, and for as long as I've been here, he's come over and he's donated his services. And of course, we recognize his services with the invoice, and we usually send a thank you letter, which Beth and I will follow up with.
Services for approximately $215. So may I have a motion from a board member on the floor to accept this donation, please?
I'll make a motion that we accept the $215 value donation from Poliquin Welding.
All right. And Jay's going to second. Okay. If there's no further discussion, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blen?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
All right, that motion carries 5-0, and we thank Mr. Poliquin for his generosity, as always, to the town. Next item on the agenda is RPC Clean Energy presentation. And so I believe I handed out some stuff for you, so We also have, I believe, a PowerPoint presentation, or hopefully a PowerPoint presentation.
And I understand that it's a busy time for
Yes.
all of you, so I'm going to be brief, and I will leave the presentation with you. I'm going to skip over a couple of the slides and just give you the
Excellent.
high-level details and then take questions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So, yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Actually, one point, I think one of the reasons to come before the Board of Selectmen is so that anyone who's watching, that's a citizen, can understand what this is about. It's not just about us, we've seen the presentation.
Gotcha, that's
Thank you.
helpful. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Henry Herndon. I'm employed by Clean Energy New Hampshire. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and I'm going to speak briefly about community power or community power aggregations, which is an opportunity for municipalities as a result of new legislation. Just if you're interested in background on the organization, really, as far as you're concerned, who we are, Clean Energy New Hampshire, we're a neutral expert source of information and education for New Hampshire's communities. We have business members, individual members, and local government members, and this is just a map of the communities that are dues-paying members of our organization, cities, towns, and counties represented there on the map, and we're all about neutral education. So I won't say more about us, and I'll just get right into the subject matter.
Excellent. Okay.
So community power or community power aggregations. As a result of legislation passed in 2019, local governments like the town of Plaistow and other cities and towns and counties in New Hampshire can procure and provide electricity on behalf of their residents and businesses. So what that means, in the graphic on the screen, is really three pieces. There's a wholesale electricity procurement. That's a bulk purchase of electricity, competitive electricity, on behalf of all of your residents and businesses. That power is then delivered by your utility company, which I believe is Unitil.
Yes.
So they continue to own the grid and operate the grid. You're just choosing what power you want to purchase. And then that power is delivered to your communities, and they can benefit from new programs and services, which I'll talk a little bit about. If you want to read the legislation, that's RSA 53E, relative to aggregation of electric customers by municipalities and counties. Just a brief overview of some of the potential benefits. Local control, first and foremost. If Plaistow were interested in this kind of a program, you could really democratize your energy procurements to the community level and decide what kinds of energy goals you want to prioritize collectively. So you get that local control aspect. There's opportunities to lower costs, and we see this in other markets that have similar types of policy, where you can outcompete the utility price of energy supply. Some communities prioritize renewable energy or clean energy, and there are opportunities through community power to either buy clean energy or to build new local clean energy that then provides power to all your residents and businesses. In terms of process, how might the community go about this? There's 4 steps laid out for in the law. You would form a committee. That committee would author a plan, and there are templates and resources that can support that. Your legislative body, so I believe town meeting here in Plaistow. Mm-hmm. Town meeting vote would approve that plan. Okay. And then you would go ahead and negotiate the procurement of power, notify your customers, and launch the program. An important note here, after you've gone through all of these steps, you are not committed to anything financial. You just now have the authority to negotiate for the purchase of power. And then if you do go through with that contracting, all of your residents and businesses get notified in the mail. They say there's Plaistow Community Power, and you may now opt out. You can check the box, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And if they don't check the box, they're automatically enrolled.
Okay. Is there an automatic renewal for that? Or, I mean, can a person opt out 3 years down the road, or is it?
Yes,
Yes,
you can
okay.
opt out at any point in
All right.
time.
Okay, great, great.
So the back end of the power sector can be complex, and there are some service providers that can help with this. But one approach is a new organization that is forming in the state called Community Power New Hampshire, or CPNH. And what this is, it's a statewide nonprofit that is in the final stages of development that would be membership-based, and it would house the logistical, administrative, technical back office of negotiating for your power under sort of like a community power entity. It's sort of like a New Hampshire Municipal Association for community power. The benefits of that, governed by the community, so a board of directors of appointees from its members, be they cities, towns, or counties. Really a focus on member education. The power sector can be complex, and helping to build that local capacity and understanding of what are you actually buying when you buy electricity. There are benefits of economies of scale. Your question?
Yes, real quick. Where's the negotiation for the power? Where does that happen? Does it happen here at the CPNH, or does it happen with your organization, or does it happen within the individual towns?
So not with my organization. Either Plaistow could on its own negotiate for power, or Plaistow could hire an individual consultant to help you negotiate for power, or Plaistow could join with CPNH, and CPNH would help you negotiate with power.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So, well, I guess I understood that this would be, that power would be negotiated based on all of the members' need. So we'd be purchasing a large amount of power, and that
Yes.
we wouldn't have to individually do this town by town.
Oh, so CPNH can assist with that, exactly, where you can benefit from the economy of scale of many towns pooling together, and there are better economies of scale there, and there's no duplicative overhead. You all don't have to go and spend your own money on the overhead costs, because that's all shared and pooled together. So that's one of the benefits.
Thank you.
And then other potential benefits as well that are listed here, but I won't go into. I've got other graphics, but I'm going to not go into them unless there are questions. This is just sort of a graphic representation of what I just described. Many communities, one local governing board, and then the technical services to go and negotiate for power, and a timeline. But I won't get into these, and I'm going to pause now in case there are further questions from the group.
Okay, is there an annual cost for this?
CPNH. The cost of the administration is paid for in the electricity supply rate.
Oh, all right.
So within that stack of there's many components to that cost. You're buying your energy and a couple of other factors, and there's a small administrative charge in that as well.
Okay. And is it a 2/3 legislative body vote, or is it a simple majority to accept this electric aggregation? Do you know that?
So at town meeting for
Yes.
Plaistow, I
Yep.
believe it is, it is simple majority.
Simple, beautiful, okay.
So another question I would be, which organization would provide advice or counseling for a municipality wanting to do a clean energy project themselves in their own town?
That would be Community Power New Hampshire.
Okay, so so we're thinking about doing a solar project.
Oh.
So do we, excuse me, are there any demo or any other sites that have done the same thing that you guys use as example ways of doing this? Or is there somebody that we could ask to come to advise us on how to approach this?
So I want to distinguish between two things here. There's a clean energy project that would be through community power. That could be a larger scale, and that would supply the residents and businesses. And that has yet, because this is a new law, that has not yet occurred.
Okay.
That is the goal through this organization. Then the other thing would be if you're interested in a municipal project to serve municipal needs.
Yep.
And I could provide some level of high-level guidance, and Clean Energy New Hampshire, the nonprofit I work for, could provide some high-level guidance on that, and point you towards, perhaps if you're interested in hiring someone to really do your site assessment and do your financial analysis, we could do that. We could point you in those directions as well.
Okay.
And that's separate from community power.
Can you leave a business card, and I'll get in touch with you after?
Leave one for Beth, yeah, great. For all of us, yeah, all righty. So do you have any questions, Julian? Thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
questions, I just want to clarify something. Henry's primary goal here was to talk about aggregation.
Right.
There's two different things here. There's
Right.
aggregation, which is a community-wide
Yes.
power thing.
Yep.
The question that Greg just asked is more local projects which aren't part of that. They're integrated with if you were to do it, but they're not really directly a part of it. That's
Right.
actually part of I would say more or less of Clean Energy New Hampshire to get some help there, which is one of the things I wanted to ask about later, because there's a membership to that for communities to get assistance and help and guidance. They're not going to do everything for you, but they give you guidance and things, which I think Henry could explain after we get through this part.
Well, I did limit him to only the energy aggregation because we have such a difficult agenda tonight. So I did ask if he'd be willing to come back perhaps in November or December and finish off his presentation, and he was very gracious enough to say
Okay,
yes.
I wasn't aware of that, because I was going to ask I was going to motion to enter that organization, because it's something that came up at our Energy Committee meeting. And you were there,
okay.
because you were in the room at the time.
Right.
And it's something that as soon as we join that organization, we can start benefiting from it.
I agree with you on that, but I think the timing is not appropriate. We're right in the middle of budget season, so I really would like to table that discussion, which we will have before the end of the year, but it's not going to be tonight. So the only other thing I wanted to
I'd like to have
ask,
that on the action items list so we don't forget about it.
you can, you do me a favor, give me a call, we'll request it, and we'll put it on the agenda for the end of November. But you call me on that, and we can just add it to the
I was just
agenda.
hoping that then Henry's agreed to come back again.
Yes,
Is that-
yes.
I didn't know about that. Thank you.
Yes. So the only other question I have is, as a subcommittee of the Energy Committee, we have our Energy Committee Chair here tonight, and I guess I wanted to ask, and not to put you on the spot, but is this an appropriate subcommittee for you to ask your committee members to participate in?
I would say yes.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much. So we can submit this for your next Energy Committee meeting, which I'm guessing is in November, correct?
First Wednesday.
November 1st, okay, all right. Okay, so, yeah, Jay's got a question, go ahead, Jay.
So is there some type of table or something on your website that kind of talks about the cost benefit based on like population or the amount of kilowatts we need to, purchase, or is there anything like that on like your website, or is that something you can provide us?
So not exactly what you're describing.
Okay.
I could provide a study from Massachusetts that showed, I think it was 8 to 12% cost savings for these types of programs relative to the utility. I'm not sure if it's not exactly what you're describing, but that's one example. Yeah, we don't have a table that outlines that. There's generally an economies of scale to the larger the procurement, there's a better economies of scale there. But I don't have that detailed in a table.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions?
Yeah, can I ask that Beth put these materials on our website? On the energy
Sure,
portion, Bob,
can you
so
do
that
that?
people can read it?
I can put the PowerPoint up.
Okay, and that should probably go under Energy Committee, or you want it under the board, Julian?
Well, it's under energy, but I'd like to see them on the main so people will see it and possibly view it and look at it. They
All
may
right.
not go into the energy submenu.
All right.
This is something that is going to be possibly a future vote, and I think it should get out in the open.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a warrant article, I believe. All right, so if you can do that, Beth, that would be great. Thank you so much. So if there's no other further questions, I really appreciate you taking all the time to come in here to kind of just blow through this, and I apologize, but as I said, we're right in the middle of budget season, and there's a long list of
Yeah.
requests that we have to make, so we will be getting back in touch with you to talk to us a little further about some of the other projects that you have available
Yep,
for
I
us.
appreciate your time, and I'm available for follow-up. And I'll just say, probably the first programs are going to go in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go in 2021 or 2022 or even 2023, like, you wouldn't be late necessarily.
Okay, all
So
right.
there's not an extreme rush, but you could get involved with this next year if you were interested.
Excellent,
you.
excellent.
I just want to say,
Thank
this
you
is
so
kind of
much, sir.
It's a great program. It's a new law in New Hampshire, but it's been a successful enterprise going forward in our neighboring state of Massachusetts. It's been doing this for quite some time, and it's been very successful there for their communities.
Good.
And I'm glad to see that New Hampshire is finally catching up on that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
joining the
Really
21st century,
leapfrogging.
right?
Massachusetts has a fairly simple model, and New Hampshire's
Yeah.
got a lot of innovative potential relative to that, so. But yeah, thank you for bringing me out.
Thank you, sir. You have a good night.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks again. Okay, so our next agenda item is the fire department budget review, and I know the chief is planning on coming in here to talk to us a little bit about that. So while we're waiting for the chief to do that, I just wanted to let the rest of the board know that I did not receive one question from any board members regarding any of the line items on the budget. So I am going to have to assume that you guys are all set with all of that stuff, and the rest of the budgets, I'm hoping, will go fairly smoothly. So until the chief gets here, if you guys would take out the rest of the budgets that we do need to approve.
Question?
Yes?
We got to get a new spreadsheet because I just saw the email that said that there were a lot of changes, and I'm assuming they're different than the ones that are on the spreadsheet we were given.
For the
a few
fire
weeks ago.
department?
Yes.
I'm guessing, yes, there will be, and we will also be talking to the chief about what those actually are. So that's fine. I'm sure we can do that. So while we're waiting for the chief, what I'd like to do is go over all the budget items that were not approved. And I believe the first one is the executive budget, and that's on page 1 of 41. Is there any discussion with regards to that? I did submit a couple of questions to Greg, of course. So if no one has any discussion on any of these line items, I did speak with Greg about line item 10680, technical supplies and equipment for $4,000. And I asked if it was possible for him to reallocate that to other general government under our IT budget so that everything's nice and clean and neat and it's all in one package. And Greg, tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I believe you said that was a doable thing to do. Is that correct? So,
Yes, absolutely.
all right, thank you. And the other thing that I would like for the board to consider is on the second page, under executive number 630, the track program has a $100 charge in it. I would respectfully request that that be removed since it's really has not been a viable committee since 2019. I'm sure we can always resurrect something else down the road, but it's kind of not really worth it to put in this budget, in my opinion. So I would like to put a motion on the floor to approve and adjust the executive budget to $306,297. That takes the $4,000 out and reallocates that to the IT and removes the $100.
Second the motion.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, hearing none, may I have a roll call vote? Beth, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Stein?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes?
Mr. Blinn?
Yes?
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500.
And I'd just like to make note that this is actually a reduction in the budget request from last year of
Yeah,
$4,100.
yep, it most certainly is. Okay, so our next budget that we need to look at is on page 3. It's town clerk budget. Does anyone have any comments or?
It's pretty much the same as it was last year. There's a
Right.
slight increase, very, very slight. I make a motion that we approve the town clerk budget for $107,453.
All right,
I'll second that.
okay, is there any further discussion or changes? All right, seeing none. Beth, may I have a roll call on that, a voice vote, rather?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes?
Mr. Blinn?
Yes?
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500. The next budget that we're going to be looking at is on page 6. It's the assessing budget. And that was significantly reduced because we do not have to pay for values anew next year. We're off the hook on that for a few more years. So if anyone has any questions on any of these line items,
I make a motion that we approve the assessing budget for $111,818.
I'll second that.
okay. If there is no further discussion on that, I'm going to call for a voice vote.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes?
Mr. Blinn? Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so that vote carries 500, and I noticed our chief has just walked into the room right on time, actually a couple of minutes early.
And that-
So, welcome, chief, and come on up and,
While you're walking, then I'd like to remind people that that last budget was about 71,000 less than last year.
Nice.
So it's 2 in a row. That's a good thing.
yes, it is, yes, you're a harbinger of good joy here tonight.
We need it this year.
Thank you, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm well.
I saw this already.
Oh, you did so much
you doing,
work on
Chris?
this, wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
How you doing, chief? Good. Thank you.
John, we'll keep copies of this stuff for you, hard copies, so we'll give, if you could give one extra copy to Beth for him, that would be great, thank you.
Glad you're here to make that work. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you so much for coming and talking to this board tonight.
So tonight, you're used to seeing me here because I've brought the town some money.
Yes,
And tonight is a night to ask for some money back, so.
yes.
Hopefully, maybe it all balances out. So I've sent you all a budget proposal brief. You've got an itemized line of the budget that I've presented as well, and then a copy of this presentation to help make the decisions to make the public safety for the town of Plaistow better. And I think the only way to do that is to be able to make an authoritative and an informed decision. So I prepared a presentation tonight to kind of walk through the whole process and what we're deciding on, because it's not just as simple as just a budget number. So normally it does something. Oh, okay. So we got to understand that the mission of the Plaistow Fire Department goes beyond the hazards of just fire activities. There's a misunderstanding amongst all communities that they just see the fire trucks going to fires, and we have to do and be responsible and be prepared for so many more things than just going to actual fire events. So that calls us, that classifies us as an all hazards responding agency. We're an essential service. We're a critical infrastructure for the community, which means we're a necessity, and nobody else is coming. Okay, we have no competitors. If you don't like the service we're giving you, you can't go to Shaw's and do your, instead of Market Basket. We're your answer to the emergency that you're having. And it's our job to save lives and to protect property. There's three elements of effective fire rescue management that I want you all to understand tonight as we look at our budget. We got to understand the risks in our response district. What do we face? We got to understand that we have to deploy enough resources to manage those incidents effectively. And we have to be able to demonstrate how changes to those response sources will affect the safety of the responders and the community as a whole. And it's important for the decision makers to understand these three elements that we talk about tonight. So when we look at risk, it's the possibility of meeting danger, suffering from harm or loss, or exposure to harm or loss. It's a person or a thing insured representing a source of risk. It's exposure to the chance of injury or loss. As we determine these factors in our community, we have to understand that it's the probability that an undesired event might occur. It is harmful, it's an undesirable consequence, and the severity of that harm that might result if we're not prepared to respond to it. So when we look at risk management, and that's what we're a component of, is risk management for this community, we have something called a control mission. And that control mission is all the trained personnel coupled with the specialized equipment on hand, emergency responders, on how we respond to risk in a community. If the fire department cannot perform its fire rescue control mission, the community's risk balance is compromised, meaning that the consequences could become more severe. This board probably understands the demographics of this community better than I do, my short 10 months here. But I do know we have a mixed district of residential, commercial, and industrial districts. We have significant shifts in population from 7,700 to 50,000 visitors that come through the community every day that we have to protect. So it's not just protecting the people that live here. I think there's a responsibility to protect the people that drive through here, shop here, and come visit family here. We have the fire department has 5 full-time people, and make sure, because I think there was some confusion in the past that there was people at the fire department all the time. Without this grant funding that we got this year for the COVID virus, that's going to end in December, we don't have staffing at the fire department all the time. We have very, very limited staffing at the fire department from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And after December 31st, if funding's not supported in the budget, no one's at the fire station, which increases our response time drastically.
Did you say 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., or did you mean 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
6 p.m. to 6 a.m., there's nobody at the
okay.
fire station, right.
Twisted it around.
So our job, fire protection to a broad mix of residential units, commercial buildings, industrial complexes, and the wildland-urban interface of the woodlands. This is what we'd call like our bread and butter. This is why, our main purpose is to suppress fire or to prevent it from happening. We have a combined value that we protect for this community of over $1 billion. Involves the study and practice of mitigating the unwanted effects of potentially destructive fires through prevention efforts, suppression activities, and investigative processes. We provide pre-hospital emergency medical care. Our emergency medical technicians and paramedics provide a medical subspecialty service for emergency care for the medically ill and traumatically injured in the community. Through the New Hampshire scope of practice, these professionals reduce pain, they reduce suffering, they help prevent long-term disability, and they help prevent untimely deaths outside the hospital setting. And again,
Could I just interrupt your presentation to ask you if you have noticed any positive or any effects at all on having our urgent care facility here? I know they just opened up, but have you seen any positive effects or results as
so
that has gone online?
the positive effects, which it's hard for us to put a number with of how many people go there versus calling 911, we'll never know that number.
Right.
We have responded there a couple times, but
Okay.
so far it's not been an unbearable burden
Okay.
on us as a responding agency. I think we've been there maybe 6 or 7 times.
Okay.
So that seems like a big number, but they've been open, I think,
Since
3
July,
months
I
maybe?
believe. Is it July? Yeah.
Yeah, so, we're going a couple times a month
All right.
over there.
Okay.
So it is nice having that care facility there. It does handle a significant amount of minor calls that would maybe
Good.
preventing us having to respond. Or if we do respond, talking to the patient, we might be able to see if they'd rather go there instead of the emergency room.
Okay.
We can't transport them there, but if they, if it's something minor, they might want to opt just to go themselves.
Okay, thank you.
So, motor vehicle collisions and equipment extrication. So we're the primary rescue agency that responds to any vehicle accident in the community. Also, industrial accidents where someone may be injured or entrapped with the equipment that they're operating. This requires specialized tools and training. We have thousands of vehicles that consist of passenger cars, transit buses, commercial vehicles, commuter trains, and chemical tankers that drive through our town daily. And they'll start becoming important when we start talking about some of our shortfalls that we currently have. We're responsible for hazardous materials response. There's no other agency that's going to come initially to respond to any substance, whether it be biological, chemical, radiological, nuclear, that could cause harm or adverse effects to an individual's health, the general public, or the environment. We have several routes, such as 108, 111, 121A, and 125, that are major thoroughfares for various tank trucks that are transporting hazardous substances through the community every single day. We have the largest regional freight railroad that comes through town, which transports millions of gallons of hazardous cargo annually through the community. We're responsible for high and low angle rope rescue, which could be something as simple as a car off the roadway in a ditch or a ravine. It could be a commercial construction or industrial site, or someone has to wear a fall arrest. You know, you see people wearing these harnesses and such because they're working in a high space, and if something should happen and the equipment that they have fails or they fall, they're going to be hanging by that fall arrest device. So a timely response to get them down is important to prevent long-term health issues with them. Or any type of motorized lifts with a railed platform that you could rent down here at the rental store. We're the primary agency for confined space emergencies, which is underground vault storage, silos, storage tanks, sewers. Confined space has limited or restricted means of entry or exit and is not designed for continuous occupancy. We have several of those throughout the community, and we have actually already performed confined space medical care and extrication of patients, even though they weren't really trained and prepared to do that in the past. So we do have that risk here in our community. We're the primary agency to initiate a response to a trench collapse, which involves shoring up the sides and digging out someone that's been buried alive in soil. Trenches as shallow as 2 feet have a potential collapse. So we have some OSHA standards, construction standards that people are supposed to follow. When I say a trench as low as 2 feet could cause problems, that's below the standard of requiring a trench box. But what happens is if you dig 2 feet down, a lot of contractors or people that don't know any better will take the soil that they're digging out and they put it right next to the trench because they want to be able to quickly put it back. So even though they have a 2 foot down trench, they've built a mountain next to it that's 2 feet high, which increases the load bearing on the trench wall above it, which is pushing down and wanting to push that trench out. So they could easily become buried underneath several feet of soil, not realizing the mistake that they're making. The excavation of footers, basements, utility connections, and new to us, water lines, and sewer lines all pose this risk of collapse. We have a great project going on in the community right now with this potable water line. With the initial installation, we have a risk, and from now on, we'll always have a risk because that water line is going to require maintenance. It's going to have breaks in the line. They're going to have to dig it up. People don't want to connect to it now. In the future, might want to make connections to their house, so they'll have to dig down to it to make connections. So from this point forward, just that alone has created a new risk for this community and for us to be prepared.
Chief, is there a current ordinance that the town is required to comply with for contractors for trenches?
That's a great question, and I don't know if there's any ordinance at the town. Typically, it falls back to OSHA, which I know New Hampshire is a little bit different with OSHA. Private contractors still have to apply to OSHA, but I don't think...
Are we required to have our inspector basically be assured that construction sites that are working in the town following those OSHA
I've never seen that aspect of inspections on a commercial site or a construction site. It's typically making sure they're installing the pipe correctly or installing whatever it is correctly. As far as policing construction workers, companies, contractors, to make sure they're following Department of Labor and OSHA standards, I don't think I've ever seen a ruling, and municipalities responsible for that.
Okay. Go ahead, Jay.
Maybe this is a question for Mark, but is there a potential for funds from the water line or the water budget to help with this training or equipment associated with this type of, subject area?
Okay, I'm prepared to answer. If, when the water department budget comes up, if you add money there, yes.
It hasn't been,
Pardon?
Yes.
Yes, I heard you, Mark. Thank you.
Okay.
there's been a risk here before because we do have water lines in the ground already. We have sewer connections, even though we don't have sewer, it's other types of sewage, going to tanks and such. So there's always kind of been a risk here for that. We always run the risk of natural disasters such as flooding, hurricanes, high wind events, severe weather events, wildfires, earthquakes, and drought. All this was pulled from our latest hazard mitigation plan, which the community stakeholders have already identified as risk to the community. Human-made disasters and hostile events. We're going to be the first responders to respond to any accidental or intentional events which involves a human intent, negligence, or error. Example I brought up that's just still fresh on people's minds is the 2018 Merrimack Valley gas explosions where 40 homes were impacted. You had 80-plus building fires. There was one single death and 30,000 people forced to evacuate. So we had to be prepared to be the first agency in. So what I'm presented in the budget is nothing that I'm asking for is for sustainable operations. I want to make sure everybody understands that. What I'm trying to get our department prepared for is the first 45 minutes of the event. It's going to take 45 minutes to an hour to get help here, and I want our professionals to be prepared, trained, and ready to provide a service for the first 45 minutes of an event. So we start looking at operational readiness. So again, we're talking about a control mission. Do we have the capability to have the needed equipment, the training, and personnel to perform the functions for which the organization is responsible for? So this is where we start getting into some assessments. These performance goals are part of the plan that places public safety with high regard and assures that there's no needless loss of life or property damage. The fire rescue services operational needs that protect a community are not determined through personal opinions. There's so many fallacies out there. We have to understand as public safety managers, department heads, government decision makers, we cannot use a fallacy that things will not happen in our town. There are so many examples that I could bring where people think that nothing is ever going to happen in their community, or because it never happened in the past, it's never going to happen in the future. And we have to use caution with that type of mentality. Risk is not based on actual occurrence. It is based on an event's opportunity and the consequences that can happen from that occurrence. And I got an example here that since the trench was kind of a new thing that we're asking for, an opinion may be that trench collapses just don't happen in the New Hampshire area, or that people always follow OSHA standards and use a trench box. Well, earlier this year, March 23rd, up in Rochester, New Hampshire, a 60-year-old contractor was buried because he was digging a line. And in the article, it says because it lacked a trench box to help stabilize it. So we also cannot live in a world that people are always going to follow the rules. We have to be prepared to respond to their consequences when they decide not to do something.
Go ahead, Greg.
Chief, this is kind of getting back to what I asked before. So the OSHA must have a standard that says when the trench is so large, a trench box should be used. So wouldn't it be prudent for the town to basically require a trench box to comply with the ocean standards without we will not do a building permit or a construction permit?
It would help, but it doesn't force them to use it when it's there. And not to bring anything to light, but even with some stuff we got going on, people are operating outside the trench box that's there.
Well, we can't stop that, but basically we would be doing due diligence to require that. And whether they are using it, basically we're expecting them to follow their own rules.
Yeah. It would be good, so the town's, we have a safety plan for our employees here. And, it's always good to follow the national standard, which OSHA sets the pace for that. They require that a competent person be on the scene that could assess the different types of soil. And then based on the soil type and condition, what feet you're allowed to dig without using a trench box. the average is 5 feet, that you could do up to maybe 5 feet not using a trench box with really good soil. If your soil is sandy, muddy, loose, then it's less than that. So that might be something as an avenue to go into the future to see.
Mark, would you be able to speak to contractual obligations with this water project with regards to the DOT and any requirements that the state may have? Is that incorporated into our contractual agreements?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And the contractor is supposed to follow all federal, state, and local regulations. And I just want to give you a for instance. Just because you have a trench box in an open excavation hole, the trench box is only so big, and the trench can be bigger than the trench box. It's not uncommon for a worker to walk outside of the trench box into the open trench. And I think that's what the chief was alluding to earlier, is that there's actually local projects going on right now where they actually have the trench box, but they're not working within the trench box. And part of it is it's more difficult to work inside of a trench box than outside of it. So, there's a lot of safety things that are there for reasons, and I'm not justifying somebody walking outside the trench box, but it does happen.
Instead of using personal opinions or experiences, we have to look at code standards, publications that are adopted, referenced for operational needs readiness and determining deficiencies. So I've listed 4 of the biggest ones here that we use in public safety, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which ensures safe and health working conditions. The National Fire Protection Association, which publishes more than 300 codes and standards. These are the standards that are followed during building construction. This is and fire codes. We have the same standards that we follow as emergency responders, that they outline what we should be doing and what we should be trained for. So you'll notice in the budget, underneath the different line items, I've referenced OSHA standards and NFPA standards and ISO recommendations in the different line items that justify why we're asking for those increases or why we're asking for a specific number in that particular line to kind of help relate or correlate these standards to actually funding responsibilities. And we have the Insurance Services Office mitigation. Most people just call this ISO. A lot of people don't even understand that it's out there and exists. ISO develops the public protection classification for the community in fire protection. This is what determines what you pay for your homeowner's insurance premiums.
Yep.
The better ISO score we have, the less money that you're going to pay. So if we can improve our score, so when I talk about some different things that we could do to improve it, we're going to save you money on potentially save your money on homeowners insurance. I reached out to my provider to see, they do use it, most insurance companies do, and I tried to see if they would give me a number that we're a 4 now, and if we got to a 3 or a 2, what would that change our insurance, what would that change my insurance premium to, just to have as a reference. And their computer system won't let them do that. It's in there by zip code or by this town, and there's no way that they could go in there and just manually change that one time just to see what the difference would be. But I think it's important to understand that as our budget grows to help mitigate problems, our ISO is going to get better, and that's going to save our taxpayers money on their insurance premiums.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. This came up last year when we decided to keep the second tanker, and it was the same argument that was brought up, it's going to change our ISO rating. And we've made requests to the town manager as private residences to see what our current rating was and did it even change? And we never got the answer.
So I'm going to talk.
Did it change or didn't it?
No, I can tell you it's not changed because they have to come in and rewrite you can't just change one item. They're not going to come every 6 months to change a single item. They're going to come in and relook at the entire organization. So we're at a pivot point right now that with the water line going in and improving other services within the fire department, that we have the opportunity to significantly impact our ISO score and lower it. So my plan is once the water line's in to get them to come back. So we're looking, 18 months probably to request them to come back and rescore. And that's when you'll see the difference. But I do have our ISO score that I'm going to go over tonight because I think that's important for people to see where we're at. And back to finally what we look at is the Center for Public Safety Excellence. It's a best practices and proven strategy organization that allows you to do self-assessments on your organization to see where you stand. If we ever wanted to be an accredited fire department through a national service, it would be through the Center for Professional Safety Excellence. So we use them as a key to see where we're at. So I want everybody here to know and understand, and the people that are at home watching this presentation and are watching it in the future, that this section is not meant to blame any specific individual or governing body. I'm going to start talking about deficiencies and what we're not prepared for. The primary purpose of evaluating these weaknesses and threats is to bring forward operational deficiencies that negatively impact our town's public safety. Therefore, creating a platform for the stakeholders and policymakers the ability to compose an informed, competent, and efficient budget plan. So as we start going through here, needs change, risks change. I don't know where the stuff was years ago. I don't know what the budget needs were years ago. I don't plan on going down that path. I'm telling you where we're at today and where we need to go for the future, okay? The first thing I look at is our Insurance Services Office mitigation, that score that you just asked about. We are currently a Class 4. We scored a 64.48 out of 100, okay? There are 3 elements of this fire suppression that ISO reviews for effectiveness. Communication Center, our dispatch center, is 10% of the overall score. The fire department is 50% of the overall score. And then our water supply is 40% of the overall score. So we look at our communications, and I'm just going to briefly talk about this because it affects the score in fire services. But this is, understand, this is outside of my realm of management. I believe, I'm pretty sure Chief Mullen oversees the communication center, and he could probably talk more about the deficiencies that they have. But here's some different areas, for example, the emergency reporting hall, how the call could come into the dispatch center. This is like your 911, enhanced 911 capabilities, and we scored a 0.30 out of 3 total. The telecommunicators, dispatch circuits are the other 2 big keys that we could use some improvements. So overall, we scored a 4.35 out of 10 possible points in that section. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is the fire department section, the 50%. I'm not going to go down through all these, but we'll look. Will you look for credit? You see where it says reserve pumpers or a reserve ladder and service trucks, 0.50 points. These points add up. You want to get every possible point that you can when you're going through an ISO assessment. So keeping the old tanker, which has some value, we could either use it as a reserve pumper or we could use it as a service truck, either one. And we can't use it for both, but we'd be able to add another ½ point to our overall score, which could change us. When I said every point counts, it could change us from a 4 to a 3 or a 3 to a 2, depending on where we fall in those categories. Our deployment analysis looks at station distribution. Where's our fire trucks? Where do they have to come from? And how many people are on those fire trucks? And that's that company personnel right below it. So our station distribution is pretty good. We got 7.45 out of 10. That's not terribly bad. It could be improved, but that's not horrible. Our company personnel, on the other hand, is significantly deficient. We have only 2.98 out of 15. And funding people to be at the station will greatly impact that. Training is another one that was concerning. We got 2.72 out of 9. And then the overall score that we had at the fire department for our half, our 50%, we only got 27.82 out of 50 potential points. And we could do so much better than that for this community. The last part is the water supply, which is 40%. The biggest thing on the water supply is, we got good points for the system. We got 30 out of 30. We got 3 out of 3 for hydrants. It's the inspection and flow testing of the hydrants that we need to improve upon, which people at the fire station would be able to start doing that, and getting out there, flow testing them, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to flow test them, I think it's every 3 years, and we should be maintaining them every year, where we just go out and flush them and make sure there's nothing wrong with them. So we can improve that score as well. And the last thing is community risk reduction. And by improving that, as you improve these other scores, that the virgin score should go down. And at the bottom line there, you can see our total points that we have are 64.48 out of actually 105 points, the way that when they add all that together. So we could definitely improve on this. And this is the first element that I use to evaluate the fire protection services in this community, because it's done by a third party and it's outside people looking in and measuring our capabilities.
So Chief, basically, if I can just tell the people who are listening out here, because we have the paper in front of us, in your responsibility with the fire department, the two single most important significant increases that we can have to make a positive effect is in company personnel and training.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
all right.
So jumping right into training is an extreme weakness, and it's a significant concern. Our current payroll, so training has a couple different elements. One is actually having the classes available, delivering the classes, and having them to where our call members could get them. The second part is the payroll, because we're paying them to be there. So currently our payroll only supports 30% of what is required for training. So you see some increases in payroll. A lot of that has to do with those training hours that we have to have for our people to be prepared. Besides improving our ISO points, training is about preparation. The services of public safety require a competent level of technical skills, knowledge, and abilities. And all of those skills are perishable. We have to continually educate and re-educate ourselves so we're prepared for when someone's having the worst day of their life. Training is the backbone of the safety of our first responders and the community. This is what everything that we do hinges on preparation. The second component in ISO and that station distribution and is response times. NFPA 1710, I think you all are a little bit familiar with that. It was handed out, I think, last year, at the end of last year. There's two categories, 1710 and 1720. And you could reference both of those, but I'm going to tell you that 1720 doesn't really apply to this department. 1720 is for volunteer fire departments. And we're not a volunteer fire department. So we have to fall underneath NFPA 1710. That's what they're going to grade us against. So what they're saying is alarm handling time, that when we get a call, they expect us to be on the apparatus and leaving the station in 80 seconds from the time we get the call. Okay? And they expect us 60 seconds for an EMS call, because we're not having to put on as much equipment. So they shorten that by 20 seconds if it's just an EMS call. They expect us.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chief, but does the COVID pandemic here affect all of these times in a negative way?
It can, because we have to put on some more equipment, but they've not changed the standard for that, so they're not giving us any leeway. They still say, you got a job to do and you need to get it done within, get out the door within 60 seconds. Okay. That's a good question, or a good point to make. Travel time. They give us 240 seconds to get on the scene. Okay, so from the time we leave the station until the time we arrive on the scene, they expect us to be there within 240 seconds. Time matters. Time matters if you're having a medical emergency. Time matters if you've been traumatically injured. Time matters if your house or belongings is on fire. And they recognize that, and that's why they push us to this high standard of getting there as quick as we possibly can.
Is part of this training,
I'm sorry?
is part of this reduction in time training?
The training does help because we do practice those reduction time getting to the apparatus, getting our equipment on
I was not
faster.
thinking more about repetition, but more than training in terms of a better way to do it than that we currently are doing it.
There's a couple things that we can improve on. I'm actually making some improvements as we speak with our dispatch center. So we're changing the way they dispatch us as far as the verbiage they use, implementing a pre-alert tone. So if you think about our dispatchers over there, could only talk to one person at a time. Okay, so if they're on the phone talking to the caller that's saying that their house is on fire and they're trying to get the address and all the information they need to get to, there's not more than one of them over there. So they have to finish all that before they can move over to the computer system and click the button to page us for the call. So I'm in the process of implementing a pre-alert tone, that there's two different tones to let us know if we need to put our gear on or if we don't. We need to know we got a call, and then if we need to put our structural fire gear on or not.
That was exactly what I was
Yeah,
asking. Thank you.
so we're moving down that path to where the dispatcher could be on the phone with the caller, getting the information. As soon as they know, hey, this is a medical call or this is a fire call, they could hit that tone button. We know by the sound that it makes, we start going to that apparatus and getting suited up or getting in the apparatus ready to go. So as soon as they get done with the caller, then they can start telling us what the call is. So yes, we're implementing those changes
Thank you.
as well.
Excellent, okay.
So, like I was talking about before 24-hour staffing, so if you look at the model that was before we got this grant, where we did not have people there from 6 p.m. at night to 6 a.m. in the morning, and you looked at the response times, it's taking 10 minutes to get the apparatus out the door. That's not a response time to get to the scene. That's if your house is on fire or you're having a medical emergency, it was taking us 10 minutes to get the ambulance or the fire truck out of the building to respond to the call. So now you add that average 4-minute response time, and it's taking us 14 to 15 minutes to get to your emergency. There was an error in timekeeping. I don't think anything was done maliciously. They just had one place for times. So the first times were recorded. The first person, if went on the scene, if there was an officer, someone that went direct, that would be an on-scene time. So if you looked at a run report, you would think that, oh, it's not like this. We're getting there pretty quick. I actually went back and pulled the records from the dispatch center and looked at the individual times and see how long it took to actually get the rescue or get the fire truck out of the building to make sure it was an accurate representation of the deficiency. So pretty significant shortfall right there. With 24-hour staffing, we are, from the time that we're notified to the time that we're getting on the scene, is an average of 5 minutes and 38 seconds. So in less than half the time it was taking us just to get an apparatus out the door, we're making the scene, we're encountering the patient, we're providing that pre-hospital emergency care, we're starting fire suppression efforts. Whatever it is that we need to be doing, we're doing it, and we're getting there in 5 minutes and 38 seconds on average. That's 18 seconds over the industry standard. So I'm hoping to shave that 18 seconds off.
So I might be jumping the gun, but just because you were talking about this here, did you estimate the total FTE that would be required to go from what we were before to 24 hours?
So that's coming up in a couple of slides, but I could quickly talk about that. So when he's saying FTE, he's talking about full-time equivalent employees. So ISO looks at that as how many people do you have at the station, and that's coming up. It's like what we got credit for is like 1.3 or something like that as an FTE. They have a couple different ways that they'll standardize or that they'll grade us there. What I would like to get to is if we have a minimum staffing level, they'll use that number.
Okay.
So if we could have 3, then that number automatically jumps to 3.
Okay.
So great question.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jay. Yeah, sorry.
So regarding your response times, is there specific routes within the building that are faster than other routes? help shave seconds?
There's some design flaws in the Public Safety Center. Again, I don't think anything is done maliciously, but for one, the bedrooms are the furthest away from the apparatus bay. So at night, they're having to walk the longest distance to get to the apparatus to respond. You have kind of two buildings in one. You have the EOC and training room, if you will, that's a block. And then you have the rest of the building that you walk around the outer parts of it to get to the apparatus bay. It is faster to be able to walk through the EOC and training room depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from the bedrooms and if you're coming from some of the offices, it is a little bit faster to be able to walk through there versus having to walk out front and back around. I have actually checked that just to see. I did that early on when I was here, and it's about 20 seconds faster to be able to cut straight through versus having to walk. So I know we're talking like something minute as seconds, but in a score, in efficiency, in emergency, every little second adds up. So that would change some things.
Is that something that you don't have available to you right now?
Right now, we use the training room for training. Other than that, the doors are closed, and we're staying out of it.
So you have to go around?
We essentially have to go around up to the front, not outside, but up to the front hallway and then back around. So it's like a big horseshoe, if you want to look at it, instead of going straight through.
And that 20 seconds could put you under that, if you go back to your previous slide, put you under that 18 seconds over the industry standard.
That would put us, where our average call now is all underneath the industry standard.
20 seconds seems like a long time.
So why don't we just go through the room? Usually nothing going on in there anyway, isn't there? Not that I've gone through there.
Yeah, that could be a question maybe for another meeting or a different venue. So that's something that we can look at, though, to improve our response time.
Okay.
So, and here's a question that you were asking about FTE. So they look at our response personnel, which is the average number of people available for the first alarm assignment. So what that means is the first apparatus out the door. What are we able to provide? And we got a score of 1.43 is where we scored with 10 call personnel. So they look at your total call personnel and if they're active within the organization, and it takes 3 to equal 1. So they've averaged a number of 30 on the roster, so that's how they've come up with the 10 on that side of it. Which is, right now they're saying we're only about 20% effective with response personnel because we just don't have enough people there to make a significant impact quickly. This can change with the minimum staffing standard. That's what I was talking about. If we fund and fill a gap during the day and say we have a minimum staffing of 3 during the day, and we continue the night staffing with 3, and we tell them when they come in that we have a minimum staffing of 3, that number will automatically change to 3. And then if we still have 30 on the roster, it'd be 3 and 10 call personnel. So that would improve that score pretty significantly. And we also have to remember that even though I'm judging us against ISO, it's not just about ISO points. Personnel is the heart of public safety. It takes a couple elements to be successful, and that's, for us, that's people, equipment, and water. You know, we got to have those 3 elements and ingredients if we want to be successful. On motor vehicle collisions and equipment extrication, we're deficient there because we're not equipped, trained, or prepared to handle a rescue that's beyond that of a small passenger vehicle. Most of it deals with training. We have hydraulic equipment. It's just how do you utilize that on something that's more heavy duty and robust, such as a school bus, passenger bus, dump truck. We do need some more stabilization equipment. We don't really have enough stabilization to stabilize a vehicle that's on its side or off the roadway, such as those larger vehicles. So this is an area when I'm asking for more equipment needs. This is where I'm pointing to, is stuff that to be able to do something besides a small 4-door sedan. Talking about motor vehicle collisions, and I'm going to tie this in some other slides as well, but I'm just going to show this once, that I think it's important for you all to understand is when we're dealing with someone that's traumatically injured, it's scientifically proven that we need to deliver that patient to the operating room. Right? When you're traumatically injured, that's considered a surgical disease. And we need to get you not to the emergency room, but to the operating room in less than 60 seconds. And that's something in our industry that we call the golden hour. That we have the golden hour, and that's the time that you're injured. 60 seconds later, 60 minutes later, you need to be
I was going to say,
in an operating room to get fixed to increase your chance of survival. Anything over 60 minutes will drastically start decreasing the chance of long-term disability or survivability. So when we start talking about consequences, this is one of the consequences of not being prepared, talking about humans' lives and untimely deaths. That doesn't mean you die right there on the scene. As you're traumatically injured, you're bleeding out, and you're not getting surgical care, your organs will start to shut down. So what will happen is you might survive the event, you might get to the emergency room, survive, you might go to the OR and survive. But what happens later is 3 to 5 days later, a week later, you die of something called multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. And that's because your organs were shocked beyond repair. So we want to get our patients to the hospital as quick as we can. We operate under the golden hour, and we operate on something else called the platinum 10 minutes. The platinum 10 minutes is the most time we want to spend on the scene with a patient before we're moving them to the ER. Hazardous materials, we're not equipped, trained, or prepared to handle any sizable amount of a hazardous materials incident or response. The comfort of being part of the Southeastern New Hampshire Hazardous Materials Mutual Aid District has created somewhat of a deception for preparedness, response, and mitigation capabilities. So when you look at that, and I've reached out to them and talked to them, I've had some really close conversations with that group. They're fantastic for long-term sustainable operations and to bringing the expensive equipment, specialized equipment. But it's going to take them on a good day, and this is a quote from them, on a good day it's going to take them 45 minutes to get here. And then they set up, before they can make entry, you got to add another 10 or 15 minutes to get all that equipment on. You're talking at least an hour. Again, this is where I'm trying to get the department's capabilities improved so we could handle the first 45 minutes. We're still going to be calling people. We're still going to need that sustainability. We're still going to need the expensive equipment that we don't necessarily have to have on hand, but we need to be able to handle the first 45 minutes at least. We currently don't have the capability to establish a firefighting foam line on a flammable liquids fire. So our fire trucks carry foam, but what we're carrying right now is Class A foam, which means it's used on ordinary combustibles such as wood, paper, and plastics. We need something called Class B foam, which is a fire classification for flammable liquids. We have a couple containers of it at the station that's 20 years old, okay? But we don't have the right equipment to inject that into the hose lines and the right nozzles to be able to apply that on a flammable liquids fire. So if we have a car accident, we have a fuel tank rupture, we have really no way to mitigate that other than using a dry chemical fire extinguisher. There is a chance that we could use a water line and push the fire off using a fog pattern, but that gets really tricky if you have a three-dimensional or any sizable amount of spill, or you have stuff in the middle of it. So we definitely need to improve our hazardous materials capabilities.
I have a question. On the foam, is there like an expiration date on that, or is that, you know, if you haven't used it and it sits in the truck?
Yeah, most of it's, you're kind of pushing it if you're asking it for 10 years.
Okay.
And like I said, the foam that we have there was manufactured in 2000. So I am trying to get that fixed, but it takes money to fix that. I'm trying to find money in this year's budget. There is a foam concentration that we can change to, that's what I'm wanting to change to, so we could keep that in the fire trucks, and we could use it on Class A, B, C, and D fires. So with not much more expense than what regular Class B foam cost. So I'm working on some different avenues already to try to fix that with the funding we have.
Thank you.
Again, you know, we're responsible for high and low angle rescue. There's nobody else in this community that's trained to do that. And we're not equipped, trained, or prepared to handle a high angle rescue. We do have some rope capability, something over the bank, a car off in a ravine, we can handle that. But if we have a patient hanging from a harness because they were on a radio tower, they were over here at the old water tower, or they're on a lift bucket and fell out of it, they're going to be hanging there a long time. When I say a long time, 30 to 45 minutes, before a mutual aid department's going to come in and be able to execute a rescue. Again, that increases their injuries, because when you hang from a harness, especially if you're upside down, you don't have 30 to 45 minutes to wait. So again, this is another significant shortfall that we need to improve and be ready to respond to. Which we already talked a lot about trench and collapse rescue. Again, right now we don't have the equipment, the training to be able to handle that. Any injured patients would have to wait for mutual aid departments to respond. I've reached out to 2 departments that do that, which is Salem and up north of, I can't think of the other one now. But they're going to be an hour before they could get here and get set up. So again, we would still be calling, we would still be calling them to come in to help us, but we could get so much done the first 30 to 45 minutes while we're waiting for them to get there. That's helping with that golden hour. That's getting that patient. When a patient becomes compressed by soil in a trench, because that's where they're stuck, significant negative things happen to the human body. And if we can't get you out in a timely fashion, you have obviously untimely death or long-term disability because of the acids that are building up in your body, because circulation is pretty much stopped in those areas that's compressed. Obviously, we talked about our natural and human-made disasters. The good thing is that if we improve these other areas of deficiencies, we will improve our necessary level of service listed for natural human-made disasters. It all kind of plays hand in hand. If we could get these little things fixed and we could get trained to handle some of these little calls and experience, if we have a larger scale event, we're better prepared to handle that as well. We have to get better at fire inspections and pre-incident planning. Right now, we're doing fire inspections on completed for new construction and remodel permits that we do an inspection for. But we lack inspections for existing commercial properties. We should be inspecting commercial businesses 2 times a year for life safety code violations. So we got 2 inspectors. We're starting to get some of the infrastructure in place, such as some laptops and some software. So hopefully we're going to start improving that as well. Obviously, adequate life safety inspection program is the first line of defense for preventing disastrous consequences. Fire and life safety education. We don't have anyone trained in a specialty of fire and life safety education. Funding for this program would significantly improve fire safety programs delivered at the school and in the community. And it's also a component within the ISO system that we're going to get some pretty good some points by investing just a little bit of money to send someone to school to get this credential. And once you have it, you have it. It's nothing that you have to continually go back to school for every year. It's just getting it initially. Grant funding. I think it's important to mention that the Federal Emergency Management Agency has an assistance to firefighters programs to get funding. We're active in applying for those programs, which you've all seen the fruition of that. But it's also important to understand that when a notice of funding opportunity is released, all right, the grant committees establish priorities for that specific grant. So if we're going to author a grant, the first thing we look at is what priorities do they have? And we want to ask for what's in the high priorities. If it's not in the high priorities, even though it's stuff that we really, really, really need, we're not going to get it. Because as a nation, they're not considering it as a high priority. So grant funding does help, but when we're looking at just basic functional needs, it's hard for us just to hang our hat on saying, let's just go after grant funding for that, because there's a good chance it's not not going to be there. So as we get into the budget, and I'm trying to move as fast as I can, so if I go too fast, throw your hand up. You notice there's some changes within our operational budget. One of those changes is I've combined some budget line items just for some general house cleaning. We had several different line items that were kind of doing the same functions, which make bookkeeping a little bit more difficult and increase chances for errors. So I've combined some of the budget lines, which within the itemized printout, it lets you know that this was moved to line so-and-so or whatnot, just to try and make that a little bit cleaner. I want to realign some of our full-time salaries. We have some offsets with responsibilities and job descriptions to where we got people really doing the same job and have the same level of responsibility, but they have different ranks and different pay. So I'm trying to improve some of that as well. And also within that, enhancing the job descriptions that for them to be in that position, that they have to have these credentials, and when we move to that. So as you look at some of the different lines, that's one of the changes that I've proposed. The other part of that is that there's really not a significant increase. When you see that, you might get scared that, oh, I'm trying to raise a bunch of salaries. It's 1% over what it would normally be to kind of clean some things up. So if you went with a typical 3% raise across the board, there's a 1% difference to clean some of this up and actually put people where they should be with their rank and responsibilities. And that's further explained in the itemized budget lines. When you look at our basic mission for fire rescue services, those are the 6 categories that we really need to improve upon, which I've been talking about in ISO. Uniform line is a combination. So when you look at that uniform line, you think, oh, it's really significantly grown. But do understand that that is a uniform and personal protective equipment, PPE. So that are several lines that have been put together now as one uniform/PPE line. What drove that line in the decision-making is those different NFPA standards listed there and OSHA standards of stuff that we should be providing our responders. Our gear that we wear has 2 different expiration dates on it, which a lot of people don't realize. The entire set of the gear expires in 10 years. The outside part of the gear expires in 5 years. You know, so we have been underfunded to even keep up with replacing the gear as it's expiring.
So Chief, have you made arrangements to periodically replace certain percentage of this, so it's kind of a revolving thing and it level funds the budget for that?
That's where I'm wanting to get to, starting with this budget, is
Okay.
it'll start that process of making sure we have enough funding to sustain those replacements as gear expires. And that doesn't even include gear that becomes damaged. You know, sometimes because of what we do, we might damage some gear that has to be replaced because it just can't be cleansed or repaired. So anyway, so when you look at that, our duty uniforms, our turnout gear, that's for the entire department. That's important to understand that that number is not just for one person. It's not just for full-time people. That's for the entire department to have a sustainable plan for uniforms and personal protective equipment. Medical physicals is something that we've only done on a pre-hire schedule. Both NFPA and OSHA require medical physicals of firefighting personnel to be done every 12 months. So I've put some money in the budget to achieve that goal and the health and safety of our personnel to make sure they're fit to fight fire. They should be going through a medical physical every 12 months. Also, cancer in the fire service and fire service personnel is significantly higher than the general public. So by no means is this a cancer screening physical, but it will catch some things that are out of normal, which can point people into more specialized assessments.
Is the medical assessment any different than like say a yearly physical someone would get?
It's a little bit more in depth than a yearly physical. We have to do a chest x-ray every 3 years, a baseline one, and then that one's every 3 years. We have to do a 12 lead EKG every year. we have to do a pulmonary function test, a hearing test, and a visual test. And then it's your basic medical assessment from head to toe. And then also it includes lab values where they draw blood and look at different lab values as well. So again, both of those standards I outlined. If you want to research some more, if you have more questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Thank you.
We don't have any way to do pre-incident planning. So all of our commercial properties, industrial, institutional, and other similar buildings, we should be making annual visits to and drawing out a plan of what resources that we would need if that building was on fire or some type of emergency occurred there, and how to coordinate those responses, and also if there's things there that are hazardous to the responders, it's recorded in that, so it gives us a preempt warning that there might be hazardous substances or chemicals there, or the building's dilapidated and it's a collapse issue. All that should be in a pre-incident plan, and I'm proposing some money in the budget to be able to have that software to be able to do that. So it's significantly a firefighter safety issue, but we also get ISO points for that we've not got before, because we don't do any of that currently right now. So that's both an NFPA and an ISO. Per diem staffing, which we've talked about already. Right now we kind of have a fractured system. Monday through Friday, we have a third person 8 hours a day during the day, and then on the weekends we have them for 12 hours. So they're there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I want to change that so that third person's there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. That's a critical period for our organization to where our responders are the least available to come back for calls, especially during the week. They're actually probably more amped to come back on the weekend than they are during the week, you know, if they're not gone on vacation or gone traveling somewhere. So I'm asking for that extra 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, to be able to fix that and actually fund that for 12 hours instead of the fractured system that we use now. And then to provide coverage at night to continue what this grant has been funding with 2 responders at night and a supervisor. So how we break this up is there's 2 responders at the station that are getting paid to be there, and then we have a supervisor, which has to be one of our officers, that has a take-home staff vehicle, a command vehicle. They get a little bit of they get a $50 stipend to be on call, and then they get paid per call. So we're not paying them 12 hours to be at the fire station. We just pay them every time they go on a call. So it seems to be a pretty good model right now that's working, so to continue that. That gives us a 3 minimum at night and gives us a 3 minimum during the day. So we could tell ISO that our staffing level is 3 as a minimum. Payroll for training, which you've seen all the shortfalls that we have for training. These are all the standards that I've referenced in there of what we have to be trained on and what's driving that requirement. So there's several NFPA standards, there's OSHA standards, there's ISO driving that. I'll give you a quick example of to drive and operate the fire apparatus. You have to have a minimum of a 60-hour initial class and how all that works. Pumping water through the fire lines is not like turning on a water hose. It's hydraulics, it's math, it's science that you have to understand. Until recently, we didn't have any members that actually met that 60-hour minimum. And last week, we just finished the first 12. So by the end of the year, I'm going to be hitting some of our full-time staff. By the end of the year, I'm going to go out and say that 100% of the people that can drive right now will have this minimum standard training, which is going to be huge for ISO points and for the safety of our firefighters and the public. So that's just one small element of that.
So Chief, if you received all of your funding for the training that's needed as well as the equipment, when do you feel you will be in good shape? Will it take approximately a year to accomplish this goal, or
It
is it
would
gonna be
take at
longer?
least a year, and then ISO for training looks back the last 3 years.
Okay,
So I want us to get at least a good year, year and a half, maybe even 2 years of training and record keeping before we ask them to come back, because that's,
right.
they'll look back the last 3 years in our training records. So obviously they see that we're improving, and it's going to help affect the score, but to help it the most, you might as well get the most data fixed first. Fire department equipment, the ability to meet minimum standards for equipment and replace outdated and unreliable equipment. The majority of the trench equipment that I'm asking for is a one-time purchase. Okay, so within the budget itself, it's like a revolving door for long-term sustainability. This year we work on this project. Next year we use that funds for a different project. The next year we use those funds for a different project. So this first time, what's important for us to try to catch up on some of our deficiencies is to buy some of that trench equipment. But like I said, once it's purchased, most of it stays good. I'm not going to say forever, but probably 10 years before you have to think about replacing anything. We have a lot of fire hose, which is outdated and unreliable. Does it pass a test? It passes a static pressure test. But when you start flow testing it to see how much water comes out the end of it, because of the age and condition of the inside of the hose, it's dangerously and significantly reduced, which is a problem for us. We have lengths of fire hose that are way too long, which is a danger to firefighter safety. If you could think about in this building right here, and this building's on fire and it's full of smoke, you can't see anything. We're having to do a lot of our crawling around by feel. And if a firefighter becomes lost or disoriented, one of the ways they could find their way out is finding a fire hose and following that's like our rope. And we do that by finding where the coupling is, and it'll help decide which way to go to get out. Right now, the hose that we're using is 100-foot length. So if we have a coupling inside the door somewhere, and say we get lost and we find it, or we're trying to find a coupling, we're trying to find that coupling, and we're 10 feet off from it, but we crawl the other way. We're crawling 90 feet to figure out, oh, that's the nozzle. We need to be going the other way. So we're potentially crawling almost 200 feet sometimes to be able to get out of the building. So having 100-foot sections of hose is somewhat dangerous, and we need to really have 50-foot sections of hose for firefighter safety. Our hose threads are not national standard threads, which becomes an issue with marrying them up with other departments. Most fire departments have changed a national standard thread model years ago. So where we've accepted hose from other departments, and this is old hose and it's hand-me-down hose, it seems like a good idea at the time, but in the long term it can create other issues. And obviously, what I've talked about tonight is we've been unable to perform some basic functions because of this missing equipment that we don't have, such as an inline foam adductor and a foam application nozzle and stuff to be able to put on a flammable liquids fire. So again, when you look at the equipment line and why I've increased that, I have very specific things that we need to buy this year. Next year, there'd probably be some other specific things. If not, we take it away. You've seen the way I developed the budget is I'm not just asking for a flat line amount of money. I'm telling you what that money's going to be buying and why we need it. So in the next year, if we don't have specific items, then maybe that line could go back down a little bit. And then the slide everybody's been waiting for. Understanding that, and transparency to our funding needs, I think, is important. So to that, again, I talked a lot about deficiencies, and it's not towards any certain individual or governing body. I want to reemphasize that. I don't normally like to compare our agency to other agencies, but when you look at the public safety theater that we operate in, the two agencies that typically make up that public safety foundation is your police department and fire department. And we have a significant imbalance in funding. The police department's got a $2 million budget, and we have a $718,000 budget. That's a significant imbalance that really helps paint the picture of public safety in a community. Those two budgets should be somewhat close together and not so far apart. I want to bring full awareness to you all, the decision makers, and understand that this composition is mostly because of years of inadequate funding. So when we start moving forward and moving the budget up just a little bit, that's to help us catch up, but then it's also to help us sustain that where we need to be in the future. The amount of money that we're asking to increase with the help of our finance director. When you look at property taxes in Plaistow, I'm asking for a 19-cent a day increase. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, I'm asking this board to support a budget that would greatly improve the services and public safety in this town.
Board, any questions for the chief?
The budget sheet that we received, and I'm looking at yours, and you mentioned that some items were removed, and I did see that in a couple of places, but I didn't see it in the very first permanent positions, which is the largest increase, from $80,000 to $312,000. I'm guessing that the permanent position FF is one of those numbers that made up that 312,000. Is that correct?
So when you look at, so these are some budget lines that's been combined together. So what we were budgeted for in 2020 is $298,703 for permanent positions. And then that number's going to increase to $312,437.
Okay, so you're already combining some things together.
Yes, and
And
this one I handed out has got the combined.
Yeah, this is broken out. These are two, the first item, 014220-10-110, is also about halfway down.
2110.
It's very similar, but it's 20-110.
2110, right.
So
What I'm trying to
move-
find out is which of these lines on this budget have been rolled up to the top item.
So I could tell you that in just a second.
So could I just maybe make it a lot more simple for everyone, because it is getting very late, and we've spent over an hour on this.
Yep.
I took the 5 positions on the fire department from 2020, permanent, full-time, call, overtime, and callback, and I added all those numbers up for 2020, and then I looked at 2021, and there are permanent positions. The full-time was eliminated, the callback was added, and the overtime was added, and so the callback was taken out. So basically, I just took those 5 categories and added them up from 2020 versus 2021. And the difference that I came out with, because that's all personnel related, was about $192,645. So that is the dollar amount, and primarily, I'm guessing, the primary increase in this department budget. Now, obviously, the chief has indicated that people needed raises, promotions, and adjustments in their, general course of action. So I guess a question that I would have for the chief is, out of that $192,000, approximately what dollar amount would we be looking at to staff the fire department 24/7? And I'm guessing, is it about $160,000, 150, 160?
171,500.
171, okay. So I guess basically, gentlemen, and that's what we're
That's-
looking at. And that's the price
And that's,
for safety, basically.
and that's going from 1.3 to 3.0.
Correct,
Is that correct, Chief?
yes.
Okay, so it's an increase of 1.7. I think it's important to understand that.
So,
that's
yeah, so
actually,
the previous budget, or the current budget, I should say, you had the fire chief had a line item, the full-time people had a line item, they had a training line item for salary. Well, I took all that and put it in full-time salaries.
Right.
And then I have a separate line just for overtime, so you all can understand what that's being spent on. And then I have a separate line for the call firefighters.
So you consolidated 5 line items into 3, basically.
Pretty much, yes.
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 So here's my concern. My concern is we hopefully now start to understand this. And I think it's going to be a challenge for the budget committee looking at this sheet to come up with that same conclusion.
Okay.
It's not clear. It's basically, it's not expressing what you've done in terms of consolidating
Consolidating
things.
some of the lines. It looks like some of them are drastically increased, and they've really not. They've just been
Right.
moved to where it's
And,
Right.
and that's what's going to happen is as they go down, which when I was in the budget committee, that's why I did it. Went down and said, this line item changed. And so not understanding that that was reduced or some other number was added into it, and it's hard to understand it from this perspective. Because they all have different.
So I could get
Account
with
numbers.
Greg Colby and have them, that sheet, make sure that's marked on them, to understand which ones have been moved to what lines
Exactly.
for
Yeah, I was
future.
gonna say, in the descriptions, if we could, because there aren't any in here, they're all in here, but, if that can be described here, that would probably be very helpful for the budget committee. So,
Yeah, that's something I think we could easily do, because I got them all listed, which ones changed to what line and which ones were combined.
But the bottom line request is still going to be 931,000, right?
No, 918, 285. And I believe you were right earlier, Julian, you said that this was an original sheet that was adjusted
Yes.
after we received it. So we
Correct.
would need the updated sheet. So the correct number is $918,285, and the Budget Committee would need to have that sheet as well.
Correct.
That's still, that's a pretty significant increase of a budget that I haven't seen since I've been a selectman in any department.
And
And
yeah,
it's gonna
and I
be
do
tough.
understand that.
So I'm just trying to get this simplified overview. Are we basically going from a part-time fire department to a full-time fire department, or?
No, we're not even close to a full-time fire department. We're going from a fire department that was only staffed basically 8 hours a day to 24 hours a day.
So let me say to this board that it has normally been precedent in this town that whenever full-time fire or police personnel have been hired, we have put that out to warrant, to ask our legislative body, our taxpayers, if they in fact do want to fund this. I would like to throw this question out to the board now, that, I mean, what price actually do you put on safety? I know things in the current political and economic climate are very, very different than what we looked at a couple of years ago. People are more fearful. There's more things to be afraid of. And I'm just going to very quickly give you a personal experience, and I'm not going to cry when I say this, but my husband had a medical emergency last summer. And these guys were at my house in 3 minutes. And I cannot put a price on that. That was amazing. And
Probably the longest 3 minutes of your life, wasn't it?
yeah, you know, and so it only has to happen to you once before you understand what the costs are. So I don't know if the board would like to consider approving this budget as it is, because I do support the understanding of what you're trying to do, and it's going light years ahead of what we were used to, and it's really scary for us, but I understand the intellectual necessity of doing that. And should the Budget Committee reduce this budget, perhaps you would be willing to consider that overage of $171,000 in a warrant article to let the voters vote for it. So I don't know which way you guys would like to go with this, or, you know, whether you want to just think about it for right now and get back to it later. But those are kind of two options that we have, is to approve this budget and see what the Budget Committee says, and if they do reduce it drastically, to put the difference of the personnel in a warrant article for our taxpayers to decide, do you want, how safe do you want to be in Plaistow?
Yep.
That's absolutely true. How much of this 171,000 is EMT medical response? Because that's probably what you're talking about, and that is, every second counts.
Well, it's also staffing on the
How much
overnight.
of it is fire?
It's
One is
staffing.
protecting a building, one is protecting people.
So every second counts in really everything that we do. So if it's a person, it's your health, it's your wellness, it's your long-term disability or death. If it's your house that's on fire, the first few minutes of fire starts, it starts growing exponentially, then it starts growing by the second.
Yeah.
So now that becomes property loss and property damage. If you're in a motor vehicle accident, you're affecting a golden hour, how long it takes us to cut you out of the vehicle. So everything that we do in public safety, the seconds matters in every aspect. The only thing that, if I could chime in a little bit on some of the decision-making process, is to be sure that you all understand, to make a decision, you need to be informed on a decision you're making. And sometimes people don't know what they're voting on. So I think there's some responsibility that I'm going to ask that you help support this, because I've spent the last hour, which is really a fraction of the time, to try to inform the deficiencies and where we need to improve on to make this town a better and safer community.
I think what I'm trying to ask is, you can't replace a life. You can replace a house that burned down. It's two different issues. And the part about the safety, saving a life, everything, that's right up on top. That's 100 10%. So I'm trying to get a breakdown in my mind, how much of this 171,000 is the most important part, and how much of it is the response of saving a building. And I know it's hard to separate those two because the building burning down could also lose a life. It's two different things, and I'm quite I understand emergencies. I've been in the military for a long time, and you're doing it out in the middle of nowhere, and you know how many lives are saved today that in the past they would have been deceased. They wouldn't have come home. It's because of that response. So I understand how important response is.
And I think it may be impossible to parse that out. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure if that's something that is reduced to numbers. But can I, before you respond, can I just have Greg ask a question, then you can answer, Chief.
So first thing I'd like to say is I do support this increase. And more importantly, I want to make sure that it gets to the voters and that they have the ability of voting for this, no matter what happens through the Budget Committee. So my second thing is I have a recommendation for you. The first recommendation is to make sure that your presentation gets played back on the town channel, and then possibly that I would recommend that you decide to make this again and invite the public, maybe at the library as an example. Lastly, I would recommend that you 100% not wait for their request, ask the chair of the Budget Committee to put this presentation on for them. And right now would be a great time to do it, since they're not really into the numbers yet.
So that was my plan, is to meet with them and do the same presentation with them, learning how the budget process up here works. I felt obviously this was the first stop with you all, and then move this to the next step, with wherever you all go with it, and then meet with them and give them the same presentation. Because what I've talked about tonight is eye-opening, is a lot to take in, and a lot of it you've not processed yet. And there's a lot of it, it's not processed unless you're the one that's the one needing help. Every single day we look at people that need help. So we want to make sure we're prepared to help them.
I just want to make it clear that I support this too.
Okay.
It's just that because of the numbers involved, I think the voters should make that decision, not a couple of us here, even though I'd have to go for it if that was the decision for it. But it is something that should be brought before the voters, just like a safety complex. It was brought, and the special presentations were made to, tell us what the importance was of that vote, and let them make the decision, like Greg said.
So Jay, can I get your thoughts on this? And I'll ask John after you. What are your thinking on this? What's your thoughts?
In agreement with most of you, as far as this is, you can't put a price on public safety. I've had my personal experiences with fire departments' response times on things, and they're amazing. So, but it's a big increase, but when you lay it out at 19 cents a day, and I'm going to support this, and if we need to, put a warrant out for those two positions out at a later date, but right now I support this budget as presented, so.
All right, so am I, John, you want to weigh in on this? What are your thoughts? Can you hear us?
I just want to say that I do support this upgrade to the fire department, and it's been something we've needed for years. But Chief, are there any sort of grants that might help us with this?
So again, when grants are released, they release in a funding opportunity, they release priorities, and we don't know what those are from year to year. There's money for personnel as a SAFER grant that's out there, but that's typically going to be awarded to departments that's trying to achieve a true first full alarm assignment, which is putting 4 people on a fire truck. So that means we'd go after a grant that's going to put 4 people on a shift 24 hours a day to try to be successful with that grant. They're not in to give money out just to put a Band-Aid over a problem. They want a long-term fix, and then there's an expectation afterwards that the communities are going to continue funding those positions. So we could try to go after a SAFER grant, but then you're talking about a significant increase in full-time personnel instead of what we're doing now.
All right, so, gentlemen, I just want some feedback from you. Are you willing to put a motion on the floor for this budget at this point? Do you want to table it? What would you like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve the fire department budget.
It's 918
in the amount
to
of
85.
918,
285.
285.
I'll second the motion.
All right, I don't feel that we need to discuss this any further. We've been discussing it for an hour and a half, so I'm going to call for a voice vote.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes,
Mr. Blinn?
Yes,
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so this budget has been approved for the full amount by a vote of 500. And if there should be any further reductions or issues down the road, I think we can potentially look at a Plan B to put some of this out to warrant and ask for the taxpayers to weigh in on it. But like I said, with the current climate that we have right now, I don't think this is an unreasonable request.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
So
for your
thank
time.
you for all your work. You've done a tremendous amount of work in the very short time that you've been here, and we really thank you and appreciate it, and I know I feel a lot safer with you at the helm. So thank you very much for your time and your effort.
Thank you
Thank
for
you, Chief.
supporting.
and your explanation was excellent.
Great
That's
job.
outstanding. All right, so we're going to turn you loose to get you back to your family.
Okay, thanks.
So you have a good night, sir. And so with that, I'd like to continue to go back to our budget.
Page 7, tax collector.
We did the assessing, yes, so the next one is the tax collector. Good night, Chief. And that is on page number 7. Are there any issues to discuss or changes that you'd like to make for that? And as Julian has been pointing out, which is a great idea, this is a reduction in our budget from last year as
It
well.
is. I make a
So,
motion that
all
we
right.
approve the tax collector budget for $48,970.
All right, may I get a second on that?
Second it.
All right, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes,
Mr. Blinn?
yes,
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500. Thank you. The next budget is human resources and personnel. The only question that I personally had for Greg,
I have legal.
pardon?
That was approved.
Oh, we did approve. Oh, I just didn't write it
Yeah,
down.
we did some of them at our last meeting, so I'm trying to catch up with the ones that we did not approve.
Yep.
So the HR budget, the only question that I had written to Greg was the increase in the New Hampshire retirement. I just wanted to make sure that we accounted for the 2 people that have left and retired from our system. And the answer was yes, of course. Greg always thinks of everything. And that was, I know you're laughing at me, but you always do think of everything. And so that increase was an adjustment in the retirement system that the state put out. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct. It accounts for a significant increase in the town's share for the employees across the police, the fire, and the regular employee staff,
All right.
which it takes into account, it's only 6 months. With the state's fiscal year starting on July 1, that's when their rates change. So it's
Okay.
6 months of an increase.
Okay. Pretty hefty increase. All right.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or issues on these line items at all, gentlemen? If not, I'd like to call for a
I'll
motion
make a
on the floor.
motion that we approve the human resource and personnel budget for.
Oh, wait, excuse me 1 second. Greg?
Go ahead, John.
I have a change that on the 15th of October, after this budget went out, we were notified by Primex of our new rates with unemployment, workers' comp, and then also the property liability line items. So I would like to increase the workers' comp line, which is on page 9, about
Yep.
halfway down.
Yep,
Yep.
4260. Yep.
68,440 needs to increase by 3,696 to 72,136.
Okay.
So that makes the bottom line 1,910,526.
I missed
Okay.
that.
All right, can I make my
Yep,
motion then?
now you can make it. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Greg, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank
I'll make a
you.
motion that we approve the human resource and personnel budget for a total of $1,910,526.
May I have a second on that?
Second.
Second it?
Okay, Julian seconds. May I have a voice vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes,
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 500. The next budget is the planning budget, and that's on page 11. I didn't have any issues with that. It was just a small increase. I did ask about the mapping and if RPC took care of any of that, and the answer was no. That's been a budgeted line item for many years, so that is not anything that we can shunt off to another department, so.
So is the first line, is that partially due to the administrative assistant, the note taker?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
No, the minute taker's the next line down, but there's a
Says-
planning director and administrative coordinator, and I believe those were combined positions, if I'm not
Says right here,
mistaken.
it says planning director and then administrative assistant, special
Right.
projects.
Right.
So that was an increase for that. Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? All right.
What's the increase for the director position?
Yep. Yeah, and you could see the description out there, the planning director, $55 an hour times 52 weeks, and the admin assistant.
And what's that an
And-
increase from?
And it looks like just a cost of living, a COLA thing, because there's longevity, there's a raise, and so there's, what, like $8,000 raise in there?
Special projects.
Is that for the assistant or the director?
The director and the
And the
planning
assistant,
assistant,
okay.
right.
So
So,
Can you guys see Mark?
yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
So I can speak to the first thought. There was no increase to the planning director at all. Greg, can you explain if there was no increase to the planning director's pay, why it increased the amount that it has?
I am unsure exactly. I would have to look at the administrative assistant and special projects coordinator. I do know that her longevity, she hit another level and is up a little bit higher, but would need to look at that. But that's where I believe that the increase is.
I mean, if you add up if you just do basic math and you look at the description, the $55 an hour times 52 weeks a year plus the longevity plus the admin assistant, it all comes out to about 83 grand. So, the math works.
It's got to be,
But still 9,000 more than last year.
8,000, yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
If you give me a minute, I can research a little bit.
All right, you want to table this one till he can give us an answer, guys, and we'll move on?
That's a pretty good raise.
All right. Okay,
Well,
so
can I just speak
Yep,
to that? Because
yep.
I think I heard Selectman Kieska saying pretty good raise.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's showing me on the right side. It's showing 34, which was which you say it didn't change. And then there's a
Nope.
48,000 on the description, so I'm assuming that's the other person.
Okay, well, just so that this doesn't go totally sideways, there was no raise, and there was nobody that got an $8,000 raise. I think it was to bring the budget in line with what the previous commitment was, and perhaps that we didn't have a good history on how many hours the planning director would work before. And I think we just brought the budget in line with what was currently there. I can say that the administrative assistant or the special projects coordinator received a standard 3% cost of living. So I just don't want this to go sideways that somebody got an $8,000 raise because they didn't.
all right.
Is that our only concern on that one?
I don't even have a concern over it, to be honest
It's
with
just
you.
more of a question
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
what the breakdown was,
Right,
but
right.
that's
So-
all.
Because what I did notice on some of these line items is a lot of the quote, full-time positions. They used to be broken down into department head and then full-time positions, and they're combined now.
Right.
So I think, and they did that with the fire department. I think that's why everybody's seeing these
Yeah.
huge increases when it's easily
Congealing.
explained. It's
Yeah,
easily
they're
explained. So,
consolidating.
It makes it confusing, so you don't know
does.
really what it is.
yep, you're right, Julian,
So
you're right.
I'll make a
So-
motion that we approve the planning budget for $97,561.
All right, is there a second on that?
I'll second. Can we just get that breakdown?
Yeah, I think that's what,
Yeah, Greg, could you just pencil that in, if you could just kind of break down what exactly that was, and whether, in fact, our budget number for 2020 was off also, because that might have been not right either.
I will dig deeper tomorrow.
All right,
Let
thank you
all
so
know.
much.
That'll help a lot when the budget committee gets it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Could I just get the last word in on this? before
Sure.
you take your vote?
Yep,
So the 34,320 is the same number, based on the same rate per hour and the same amount of hours. And the 2294 times the 2080, comes out to 47716.
16, right.
15 or 16. And when you add the both together, it comes out to 82,035. You add the 1,000 for longevity, and that's
Yep.
the 83,035.
Yep, so the math all works.
Yeah, math
It
works.
does. And there is no $8,000 raise in that line item. I just want to be very clear.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's why I mentioned that perhaps the 2020 budget number may not have incorporated all of the elements of it, so. Go ahead, Greg.
so this is a question that came up before, and that was, when we have a increase, it may not be that the fact that the 2021 is to need to be explained. It really needs to explain that the 2020 was underrated. 'Cause
Perhaps.
that's what, people are gonna look at that and they're gonna say $8,000 increase. But if you basically have an explanation saying that that $55,000 did not reflect the actual cost of those two people, and it probably should have been closer to the $82,000.
And the other ringer in it too is that, don't forget, under COVID, we've had reduced employment hours here too, so that's going to throw everything off kilter. So just because we're looking at 55 grand now as opposed to the 74,
It just throws the actuals off.
it,
What I'm looking at is the
Yeah.
budgeted number. So we
Yeah,
went
the
from
budgeted number.
74 to 83.
Right.
You know, the actuals.
Right.
that
No,
could
I
vary
know.
Because of, obviously, COVID
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
The
but
budget's the budget
I
part.
just was trying to determine what that,
that $8,000, and Greg is going to look into that because it may be that that was underfunded last year for 2020, but all bets are off on that too, basically.
Okay,
All right, so are we ready to take a vote on this, guys?
yep.
All right, all those in favor?
We have to poll.
Beth,
Ms.
Oh, I'm
Hart.
sorry, Beth.
Ms. Hart.
You're asking me, yes, okay, yes, I'm sorry.
Ryan.
yes.
Zakishka.
Yes.
Mr. Glenn.
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche.
yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500. Next budget is government buildings, that's on
Page
page
14.
14. And I think, again, this is an instance, again, where you look at the request for permanent positions, and it's pretty much doubled what we were asking for before, and that's because positions were combined, and I'm going to ask Greg to verify that for me.
That is correct.
Okay,
Some of the part-time position, and the permanent positions, there was some combining and some moving around. And also, I look at the total payroll, all of the payroll line items within this, I believe is about a $9,000 increase from year over year for payroll to payroll.
okay.
Budget.
Are there any other concerns with any other line items that you gentlemen may see here?
Now, does this change because we're contracting someone now? We don't have a full-time, how's that going with the full-time building inspector?
This,
Right now, we're contracting someone, not.
This is general
this
government
is
buildings.
general
not-
government, this is not
Oh,
inspections,
That's all right,
totally
got it wrong,
different
got it
thing.
confused, sorry.
That's all right. If there are no other questions or concerns on these line items, and I know that, you know, some of these utility costs may change over next year because of some of the cost savings that we've been doing with
It's
street
wrong
lighting and
person.
town hall lighting and all this other stuff, so, and hopefully if we can get those solar panels on, before the end of the millennium. That will help too, but otherwise, if you have no objections, may I have a motion on the
It
floor?
was a good question. It was, it's because we did change personnel. This maintenance of the building itself, because it says permanent positions.
The building supervisor,
Yeah.
not the inspection, not the
Yeah, not
building
the,
inspector.
guy, Paul.
Right, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
You're
So
right.
is this,
They had the names mixed up.
is this now one position or two?
No, this is permanent positions, and I believe they combined 2 positions. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct.
All right, so there was a full-time worker as well as a department head, and those were 2 separate line items, so they were combined just to streamline the budget.
Yeah, but
We
why do,
have $35,000 worth of expenses from the Public Works garage for electric, propane, and maintenance. Actually, it's 35.5, so that's a considerable amount of money that we didn't have last year in the budget.
so,
Yep.
You see that on the second page,
Yep,
on
I
page
do.
10?
Yeah. Yep, between the annex, which we've added, and the Public Works garage, and I'm not sure those numbers are, I guess they are sort of reasonable. We don't really have a whole lot of history on that, so we sort of had to guess on that, but I would rather err on the side of caution than wind up shorthanded. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm sorry to belabor this, so.
No, that's okay.
The permanent position, looks like it's now 2 and 1 part-time position?
I believe that's correct, right, Greg?
So based on the budget from last year, we went from 2 part-time,
To full and a part.
a full and a part. So we're increasing the FTE?
Well, if you add those 2 together, they're
No,
almost,
it's still, okay.
this will make sense.
one's 100,000
Yeah,
and the
one's
other
off.
Yeah,
one's...
one's 112 and one's 115.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, did we have to combine things? Why did we change it?
That's a Greg question. I guess it's for
What's
streamlining.
wrong with it the way it was, so that it wouldn't be confusing? Because now
Go
it
ahead,
sounds-
go ahead,
sounds like we have
Mark.
a permanent- a
Mark's going
part-timer
to
on the
answer
permanent.
that. Mark's going to answer that, I think.
Yeah, I can. Is Selectman Keister have a question, or?
Well, he wants to know why we can't go back to the old way we did things, or why do we change it to combine positions?
Well, the short answer is that personnel changes. We've had 2 resignations, and we've had a person that was a combination between the highway department and the general services. And we had some supplemental people that were working on a part-time basis to try to fill the gaps. And we had one worker that was ostensibly working full-time, but not receiving all the benefits of full-time. And then what we would do is, we would end up laying the person off after, 40 weeks. And then, just trying to juggle all of the different changes. So when we were laying off a person after 40 weeks worth of work, because the budget ran out for that person, but when other people resigned and there were other gaps, then the logical thing was for us to bring that person back that was going to be laid off or was laid off after 40 weeks. So it's been a juggling act, and we've been doing that for a couple of years now. And the other thing is the person that was ostensibly full-time for 40 weeks or even longer was also shared with the highway department. And I know we're not talking about the highway, but it is somewhat related. So this person in general services is the primary person over at the police department, but is shared with other facilities in town and shared with the highway department. And in the highway budget, there used to be a part-time seasonal worker doing sort of a similar thing to work X amount of weeks a year, and we haven't filled that position. So we've just kind of spread out this one person between 3 different job assignments, and we don't have at least 2 part-timers that we used to have. And every time that we went to hire somebody for these part-time positions, we couldn't find the people that would be willing to work for the wages that we were offering. So it's a union contract, and the position starts at $14 an hour. And if you know anything about, the competitive wages out there, it's kind of hard to compete against places that are paying more. But because of the collective bargaining agreement, we find ourselves in a very difficult position in hiring.
I'd also like
That's
to.
the short answer.
All right, that's a short answer, yes, okay. I'd also like to point out that the difference in the budget from last year is $56,465 of an increase. And out of that, we added 2 different buildings. We added Annex and Public Works Garage, and we added heat, electricity, maintenance, repairs, et cetera. And that came out to $52,700 with the addition of those 2 buildings. So you're only talking about a $4,000 overall budget increase without those 2 extra buildings. So that, in my opinion, is reasonable, and Greg's going to stop me. Go ahead, Greg.
No, but I'm just, holding my hand up to answer a question of, Mr. Kishka, is there is this budget, which, I've kind of inherited, if you will. We're trying to move towards a more consistency. You saw that in the fire department with the combining of the payroll. I mean, the finance department, has full-time and part-time under one line item. The planning budget, which you just approved, has full-time and part-time under one wage item. So, it's a general trying to make things more consistent across the whole budget, if you're wondering why it's changing.
Okay, I believe Jay has a question for you.
The heat and electric for the annex, is that moved from a different budget? Because didn't we pay that
No.
for,
That was the
The
courthouse.
courthouse?
The courthouse paid that.
they handled the heat and electric?
The state, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. So if you guys are all set with questions,
Make a motion that we approve the general government building budget for $348,650.
may I have a second on that, please?
Second motion?
Thank you. Even though you're not supposed to.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, all right, John, you did. I thought that was Mark talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Thank you. All right, may I have a voice vote for that, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that looks like that motion carries 500. Next budget item is advertising, and that is on page 18. And we had tabled
Can I
that.
stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Before you get to the advertising, the previous page, one that you already approved on page 17, the insurance budget,
Yep.
Yeah.
can we
yeah.
take that up again?
No.
I think you said last time.
What do you
something-
want to add to that?
What's that?
What did you want to add to it? Because I know it didn't go down.
No, we need to add $6,492 to that. Again, Primex, on the 15th gave us our rate for the property liability. And because of the addition, I believe, of the highway garage, which has added $1.2 million onto the insurance coverage, that line item went up more than we anticipated. So the new number would be $142,416.
Okay. I guess we have no
You
choice
did
in
mention
that.
last time that there was some
Yeah.
changes coming. So I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve the budget for the insurance to be $142,416.
Second the motion.
Second by Greg. All right. Voice vote.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
you.
You're welcome. Okay, so advertising, we had tabled that because of a question
And
of
that question
dues.
got answered very, very well. Tim Moore explained in a very, very, very nice dissertation all the different indirect benefits that we have from the RPC. So I have no questions or no issues anymore.
Okay.
And I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Advertising and Regional Association budget for $26,500.
Second.
All right, seconded by Jay. Voice vote, please.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes, and I might add also, that power aggregation thing probably would never have come to this meeting had it not been for an RPC meeting.
That's true. And for discussion, go ahead, Jay.
Do we want to revote these, like the 4 O's, to include John in some of these, or?
We can, but let's try and get through this budget, because I'm really under the gun to make sure that our budget committee gets us in a timely fashion.
Yep.
So let's get through the ones that we haven't voted for yet, and then we can run through them if you guys wish to do that. That's
All the
totally
votes were
fine.
unanimous, so it wouldn't change the result. The other thing is we usually re-vote them all at the end of the process anyway, if there's shortage of the numbers.
Right, right.
Okay, I was just,
Yeah, let's get through the ones that we haven't done first, and then we can go
Yeah.
back, and I have no problem with that. Okay, so next is other general government, and that is on page 21. And so when I originally reduced the $4,000 from the executive budget, we need to add $4,000 onto the computer and internet, which is ledger number 2342. So we're going to add
4,000?
4,000 to that. So I'd like a motion on the floor for 196,500 to reflect that change.
So move.
So moved. All right, may I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jay. All right, so if there's, this is pretty,
So just a quick discussion, the
Yep.
increase has to do with licenses coming due? Is that what it
no,
looks like?
we took-
Or is this has to do with changing from Armand to?
no, what we did was we removed $4,000
No,
from the
not the
executive
4,000.
budget.
I'm talking about.
Oh.
The 2020 budget for computer internet was 85,000, and now it's currently 100, went up to 130,000.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Okay, and you're suggesting that it was because we
I'm
changed IT
asking the
vendors?
question, is it because that we went to a different vendor, or is there some other reason that that price went up so much?
Oh.
Go ahead, Greg.
It has changed so much because of the added level of service that our current IT provider is, providing for us in the light of this day and age with, cybersecurity and the like, but also with the requirements of the state police and, the CGIS audits that we undergo and the like. It is, and much added layer of
Protection.
service that we are requiring and that our IT provider is providing the town so that we are, as safe as we can be,
That's
in
a very
this
good
day and age.
That's a very good explanation, and could we recommend that you change the description from Armand to something like that, that
Yes,
it's
to
increased
SE,
services? That would be helpful.
Yeah. All right, so if there's no further discussion on that, may I call for a voice vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a pretty big increase,
All righty.
percentage-wise.
Next budget item is police and animal control. And I don't know how he did it, but Chief Mullen has managed to level fund this budget. So I have no issue with it. So does anybody have any questions or any line item questions for Greg?
Yeah, how the heck do you do that?
Yeah, how did you do it? Yeah, well, he's not the right person to ask, Chief Mullen is, but.
Wow,
He's the magic
I know.
man.
that's amazing.
I know, I had to have him come to my house and do my budget for me.
There you go.
It almost seems like we have more police around, and yet we have a
Yep,
same budget.
it's magic, it must be magic, I don't know. So if there's no discussion on any of the line items, I'm going to ask for
I'll make
a
a motion
motion.
that we approve the police budget for a total of $2,011,175.
You have a second?
Second it.
Okay, Julian, seconds. May I have a voice vote?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay,
So we had fire done. I think we're at inspections. Page,
yeah, and I missed that one, I don't have that one.
what, inspection?
Yeah, I screwed that up, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, Let me find it. What was it, 26?
Page 26, yep.
I must have misfiled it or something.
That's an exception. I was looking at it, what went down was,
Did misfile it.
never mind.
Budget,
Went up 9.
9,000, yeah. You see where that is?
No, I must have left it at home because I don't have it on in my list here. Sorry.
It's spread out quite a
There was
bit.
There was a 2020 budget error where the lease on the truck was inadvertently left off. That is the bulk of the increase. There is one final lease payment that is due in 2021 for $61.71.
Yep, and that was one of the questions that I had asked you, Greg, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so if there are no other questions on that budget,
I'll make a motion that we improve the inspection budget for $136,881.
I'll second that.
all righty. Voice vote?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes?
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500. Next budget is on page 28, the highway budget. What are you laughing at, Greg?
No, I'm taking a deep breath because we're gonna have fun with this one this year.
Well, any questions on line items? It only went up 10 grand. And from what I can see, it looks like,
Still down since 2019.
where are you, Jay?
There's a
393?
number of items that, there's
831
a
to 842.
$12,000 increase for vehicle maintenance. Oh, is that a supervisor? Vehicle maintenance supervisor? Or is that maintenance supplies? About halfway down, Greg,
What's the general ledger
it's,
number?
general ledger number is 660.
Yep.
Is that
The vehicle maintenance. As we're keeping trucks longer, we need to increase the maintenance budget.
okay, so
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
that's maintenance and supplies?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, with the CIP change to make trucks last, instead of replacing trucks every 7 years, we're replacing every 21 years. And as you know, we're replacing a body this year. There's an effort to make the trucks last longer. The trucks, you only have 21,000 miles after 7 years, so there's no reason why they can't be kept for 20 years. And say the mileage is brought up to maybe 60 or 70,000 miles, and we can replace a body every 10 years. Or once in the first 10 years, and we don't replace it in 20 years because we're getting rid of the truck. So the maintenance of the vehicles that we normally would send out, or if we replace the vehicle with brand new, there are things that happen to vehicles such as broken springs and suspension parts because the trucks are carrying heavy, wings and plows and so forth. So you can expect that we're not replacing the equipment for the capital improvement plan as often, which is saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we're making equipment last longer, but we need to increase the maintenance for the vehicle. So that is an offset that is a 10-to-1 return on your investment. It's like spending $1 to save 10. The other thing is, and I'm going to offer this up, if you go to the second line item, the 120 line item for the temporary labor that I referred to. So what we're doing now is charging that labor off to the person coming over there to help out. If you wanted to reduce that 25 down, if you wanted to take 10,000 off of that line item, that's some low-hanging fruit if you want to do that, and it's not going to really change the operation. So I just wanted to offer that up to you.
Chair?
Go ahead.
I just did some calculations. It's a 1.2% increase. It's a 10,551,
Yeah, it's
1.2%
11,000.
increase. I think that's phenomenal for what's been going on within that department.
And we will be meeting with the CIP program on Thursday, and that you're going to see this budget increase in the highway is going to be positively reflected in the CIP capital reserve funds where they're not going to need to be accruing so much money every year. So as Mark said, it's a trade-off.
Yep.
And this really is more appropriate to put it in the budget this way, in my opinion. Go ahead,
I would also
Julian.
say, if Mark thinks that $15,000 would be plenty on line item 120,
Do you want to reduce
I
it?
would go with that recommendation, as long
Okay.
as he's sure, he's confident that that's a good cut.
All right.
And I noticed that our snow removal, was so far year-to-date, is like way under.
This is the
That's probably
second
'cause
line
of good
item you're
weather.
talking about?
Yes, it's General Ledger 00120.
Yeah.
Second one down, Mark just basically said if we had cut that by 10,000, it wouldn't be a problem.
All right.
So, but I say might as well do it.
Are we
It'll
for
probably help-
that?
It'll
I
help
mean,
the
really?
funding for the
But
fire
Wait a
department.
minute, are we for that? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm for that.
Well, you can vote
Basically,
no.
the number of people that we have in the highway department are doing a phenomenal job, and to be able to deliver a budget at plus 1.2%, I think is phenomenal. And if that's what the department head says he needs, I think we should give him the whole amount.
Well, who's going to put a motion on the
Well, like I
floor?
said, I would just
I'll
say.
make a motion that we approve the budget of the highway department, a
Well,
total
see,
of
well-
842,165.
All right, but we can all vote no on that, so it would not fail. I mean, I'm inclined to take Mark's recommendation on that. It's a,
Well, then you
it would
can-
be a level-funded budget, so I will need a second on that first.
second.
All right, so may I have a voice vote on that?
Ms. Hart?
No.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
No.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so
I
passes.
don't like that
All right.
procedural thing to
All
force a
righty,
vote.
okay.
And we
So it
didn't have,
passes for 842,
we
165.
never had a discussion on this vote either.
Well, I did ask. I always ask if there's any line items that you want to discuss before we put a motion on there, so. The solid waste collection is the next one, and I think we're going to need to table that because I do not have all of my numbers. I did get some information on the cart lease, so Greg Colby, I am going to need to add a line item for a cart lease somewhere down the road, and I will try to catch up with you as far as how that's going to work. And I do have some numbers that are not firm yet, but I have to bring them obviously to the board so they can make a decision. But there will be a cart lease, a 5-year lease that should be added into this solid waste collection. So we'll table that for now.
Are we all in agreement on the cart?
I thought we were the last time I did all my paperwork and all this stuff. We looked at leasing the carts because we'll be able to, the town will own them and we'll be able to keep them for 10 years as opposed to, to replacing them every time you
wait,
change
wait.
vendors.
I didn't get what you just said. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You said lease, and then you said we would own them.
After the lease,
Leasing them, we don't
it's a
own.
lease to purchase.
A lease buy
Lease,
proposal.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a dollar buyout.
Okay, I did not get that, so
All right,
thank you.
that's because I didn't explain it very well. So I'm going to table this until I have more formal numbers, but go ahead, Jay, do you have another?
I was just curious, because I don't, did we take a formal vote on that yet?
No, but I'm going to give you the information, and you can formally vote on it. I have 2 vendors that you need to approve, but it was my understanding,
Getting numbers we were getting
yes,
numbers. That's all we were
yes,
doing.
yes.
We were not deciding.
All right, just
That's
making
on
sure.
the agenda for the
That's all.
next meeting, isn't it?
yeah, and it is tied into the proposal numbers that we're getting too, obviously. So we will have to make those decisions at our next
So
meeting.
it is my understanding that if we don't get numbers that we feel are adequate from either of these 2 last, then we go back to a bid? To a
Yeah,
bid?
to a proposal, another RFP.
Is that clear? Did you
Yeah,
understand that?
I understood
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
Okay.
so like I said, I have bits and pieces, and I'm sorry, but I just can't get these guys to move faster, so. And we still have 8 months to make this decision, so it's not a big hurry, but it is a hurry for budget
Okay.
reasons. All right, so I'm going to table that for right now. So solid waste disposal is the next one, and that's on number 32.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so does anyone have any adjustments or issues on those line items? It seems to be fairly clear cut.
What was the reason that the groundskeeping went down so much?
Yeah.
We went down $25,000?
Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Not
Because we're
complaining,
doing
I'm just
the
asking.
landfill, cap engineering work, at the same time, that we normally would be doing some kind of maintenance up there. I ended up reducing that line item because I just don't think that we need that kind of money to maintain that as we roll into asking for, money to do the actual construction. The only thing that we really have to do is keep the grass mowed to the recommended standards, so many times a year. And I felt that amount could be reduced down. And so I actually reduced it down based on that. You can look back to 2018 where we only spent $6,200. So I can't substantiate, that increase. So that's why I reduced it down.
So in 2019 and 2020, it shows nothing for actual, so there was no money spent?
I can't say that for sure. I'd have to defer to Greg if he has any more information.
Going by this, I would say that that's correct, Mr. Kishka, that no money has been spent.
On the groundskeeper.
So the town manager's correct.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the solid waste disposal and landfill for a total amount of $46,500.
I'll second that.
All right, may I have a voice vote?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, great. That budget carries 500. Next budget is health on page 33.
I'll make a motion to approve the health budget in the amount of $88,617.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions on any line items? Looks like it's a couple of $100 more than the
This is-
budget
yeah,
from
about
from this
2,000.
year,
Second.
so,
$2,000 more.
yeah.
Nope,
No.
good.
All right, we good on that, guys? All right, voice vote, please.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
All right, that motion carries 500.
Thank you.
Next budget is the rec budget. The only question that I had asked Greg about was, I believe we charge, on the second from the bottom, on the first page, ledger number 2857, senior programs. I believe we charge the seniors for these programs, and I know last year we had taken the transportation out of there and used a $1 placeholder because we were going to use some of the revolving fund. So my question to Greg is, can we take that $29.25 out of this budget and use a revolving fund for that, for the seniors too, so they don't have to pay for anything?
Well, if you're going to remove it from this fund and put it into revolving fund, then that means you're going to make senior programming a self-supporting program whereby you would be charging the seniors for all the costs related to it. So it would be the ticket and transportation. It would need to, in order to move it to a revolving fund, it needs to be self-supporting.
Okay, but for next year, can they offer, oh, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
No, I just have my hand up for another question. I'll wait for Greg.
All right, so I guess my question is there's about 30 grand, give or take, in the revolving fund, which was slowly accumulating. We had this discussion last year. Is it possible for us to give the seniors a break for 2021 and, pay for some of their programming through this revolving fund to drop it down, or at least give them significant discounts so that we're using some of that funding up and we're not tagging the seniors for all of this money? I know, tricky question. I'm a senior, I have to ask.
It is a gray area, question. I mean, the revolving fund is supposed to be a self-supporting, for self-supporting programs.
Right, but it's gotten out of hand, and that's why I want to try to nip that a little bit.
So that means it would
It's a
be,
fundamental, change in usage of the fund. And, I would say, we should go back to when it was originally adopted and look at the specific language that was presented to the voters.
All right, so your recommendation is that we just leave this be? That's okay, say
or
yes,
ye-
it's okay.
I'll research it.
All right,
I'll research it.
okay, so Jay has a question, go ahead.
Well, I think some of that, within that fund, it has to do, there's a newsletter that goes out that the senior fairs probably put together, or is that in a different line?
No, no, I mean the quarterly senior sizzler?
Yeah.
I
The
believe, I
sizzler.
think that's in Mark's executive budget,
Is that
actually.
me? I thought this.
No, we
that was
moved it
all
over
moved
here. I think Jay is right, is
Oh,
in
all
that
right, you
senior
did,
program
okay,
line.
all right.
So, and that also includes, yeah, I think they use a revolving fund for some type of
Do they?
pay-to-play type of, kind of things
All
where.
right, as long as it doesn't start creeping up, because if it is really a flow-through system, there's not supposed to be 30 grand in there.
No, like,
That's my
you know,
contention.
like if they did a senior painting program,
Yeah.
it's $5. That's a revolving fund type thing, so.
Right, as long as it
Yeah,
costs
and
10
this
bucks.
might help subsidize it.
Exactly,
a little bit.
exactly.
So
Go
do
ahead, Greg.
do I understand correctly that by covering both of these line items in the revolving fund, we're talking about, I don't know, $3,000, talking about 10
I know,
years
it's minor.
worth of that revolving fund? Is
I have no idea, because we never really had any actual history on this.
And money is still going back into it, correct?
I believe so.
So I don't, let's research and find out what the actual verbiage is for the revolving fund, but if it's proper, yeah, I think it could handle this, could handle these two line items.
All right.
And we could include the entire thing, and we would have money going into the fund and minimally 10 years of funding. That's a long time.
It is. I believe, from my recollection on this, the intent statement was that it was not to be used for the kids' programs.
Right.
So I know that much of it, but do you want to table this then till we get some more research on this? What do you think, guys? We can table
I'd
it.
say we voted and do the research and
All
then
right.
re-vote it,
All right,
or-
okay, all right, I'm good
If
with
you guys want to
that.
table it, that's fine to me,
Nope.
but.
All right, so you want to keep it the way it
But I think with
is?
this fund, there's a little more to it than just paying for a program. There's,
Right.
a newsletter, and that's
Right.
costs some money
So it passed.
that the
Yeah,
seniors don't.
I
pay
do
for.
understand that, but I just think that in the past, people have been charged for activities, rightly so, but the cost was not commensurate with the expenses, and that's why that grew to 30,000. That's not appropriate to have a revolving fund with that much money in it, so we
Correct.
need to get to the bottom of it.
Right, but
All right,
it probably, I don't know, and maybe Mark can speak to
Yeah,
it.
go ahead,
but
Mark.
Maybe the process has changed a little bit now, and
go ahead, Mark. Unmute, I don't know if you can hear us.
Okay, I can't speak to that specific question that Selectman DeRoche has. I wanted to speak about something else in the rec budget.
What did you want to say?
And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I know Selectman DeRoche should be. There was a meeting of the Rec Commission last Wednesday, my understanding, and that I don't have anything, I think I may have an email, I just don't have it with me, that there was a consensus that the Recreation Commission wanted to recommend that the director be increased in hours from 32 to 40 hours and become a full-time rec director. Can Selectman DeRoche speak to that?
that was, it was a consensus to move ahead with hiring a full-time rec director.
Correct. So there's been no budget adjustment for that thought. So I just wanted to bring it up to the board, because I suspect at some point you'll get a recommendation in writing from the Rec Commission.
Is that your understanding?
Have you talked to the chair of the rec commission?
I have, but like I explained to him, that I would expect that the Rec Commission would make that in writing and submit it to the board, because that's something that happened after we prepared the budget.
Okay.
All right, and obviously that,
So is he going to submit that?
I don't know.
So let's go
I
with
don't
what
know.
we have.
I can,
and
so I'll give you the
back with it.
facts right now. I did some math here, and it appears that the current person filling the director's spot is working 32 hours a week at $19.31 an hour. And I think that they arrived at that because they took the math from the 2018 salary of the former director at 40,165 and just divided that by the 2080, and that's how they come up with the hourly amount.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if the board wanted to increase that to a full-time person, the delta is, I don't have the exact math, but you can say roughly it is about $8,000.
That doesn't include roll-up costs, so does it?
But it does, well, there's a portion of that that includes the mandatory deductions, but there would be additional New Hampshire retirement and the other roll-ups, yes.
Right. So I guess I'm going to suggest that we go with what we have, and if Mr. Coy wants to adjust this and make a recommendation to us, he can do so later. Go ahead, I'm sorry?
Got his hand up.
Who?
Greg had his hand up.
Greg Colby, go ahead.
The current position right now is being paid at $18.50 an hour. But when the personnel budget was built, we had left that position at a full-time position. So there wouldn't be any additional roll-up costs.
Okay.
It would only be an increase in this budget.
Okay, all right, that clarifies that. I am still of the mind that we need to get that recommendation from the chair, so do you guys want to vote on what we currently have? It's a level-funded budget? And then if he wants to change it, he can come back to us? All right, so somebody put a motion on the
I'll
floor
make a
for me?
motion that we approve the recreation budget for a total of $203,313.
Second that.
All right, Julian seconds. Voice vote, please, Beth?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Ryan?
I have a question, a procedural question, really. Is it, so we're going to get a letter from the rec commission, and we're going to approve the funds to possibly hire a full-time rec director?
Or increase the current director's hours to a full-time position?
Okay.
Yep.
right.
I believe so.
But
I believe so.
we're just approving a number. We're not.
We're just
we're not
approving a number,
approving
yeah.
Mark is in charge of that piece of it.
Yep. Well, actually, the rec commission is, but yeah.
If things change, we modify the budget down the
I
road.
think they both are, but,
Right now, they haven't changed.
We can revisit because we haven't closed
yeah, that's fine.
consideration for any of these.
All right, I'm
Yes.
all set.
All right, so do we vote on this? I can't even remember now.
He was right in the middle of it.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Yes?
Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 500. Our last budgeted, well, second last budgeted item is the Conservation Commission, and I know this was tabled because Julian made actually a very excellent point that over the past history of this budget, they've only spent about half of what they're requesting on a fairly regular basis. And so do we need to take a look at adjusting their bottom line budget to a more reasonable amount that, you know, that they're actually spending as opposed to just asking for all this money and not spending it?
Yeah, their highest year was 8539.
Right.
And I would bet if I was to do anything change, I would go with their highest, worst-case year.
Well, some of the line items are
Way off.
being done every other year,
Yeah,
like the water testing, and that's a sizable amount of,
Right.
they're actually budgeting twice as much as what they're actually spending. So I would easily say we could reduce that 6,000 down to 3,000. Would that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
And then dues are fine.
Supplies?
General supplies seems a little bit high, a lot high.
Yeah.
They actually spent $72 so far. They budgeted $1,500, and like you said, the most they spent was in 2018. And I don't know why that's so high. And I don't see them spending that much money. What would
if
be
we table
reasonable?
it and have the Conservation Commission or someone, the chair from the Conservation, come in and speak to the budget?
I don't know.
Well,
I would just
we
cut it in
have
half for
had, we
now.
have had the
If you have
chair come
questions, Why
in.
don't we get them out to the
We have had the chair
Conservation?
come in?
I have had the chair come in the past, and basically the response is, we need this money. So there's, there's not like a huge amount of justification. So do you want to have her come in on the next?
I'm fine with this budget, but if
You
you
are
guys,
fine
if
with
you
this
guys have
budget?
questions,
All right,
can we get them out to them and we can table this? Or do you want to approve it, get the questions answered, and then revisit it?
I don't know, what do you guys think? It's up to
Well,
you.
Kind of with Greg, like the water testing probably could go to
3,000.
3,000, and then the general supplies could go
1,000.
750.
Or 750?
And if they think that it's not a good thing, they can come back and tell us why.
So you want to take 3750 off of that?
Yep.
So that brings it to 6480?
And I don't really understand the forest maintenance part, so I don't know what to do with that.
But isn't the water testing usually done later, like this time of year?
It is, but there's no water to test, basically, so that's the other piece of
Well,
it.
yeah, but do we know for sure? Are they still going to go out and test?
Well, they have $6,000 to use, and
And
they
they've
haven't
only
used any so far.
Yeah,
There's no
in
explanation.
2019, they spent 3,000.
They didn't spend any in 2018, they spent $3,000 in 2019. They
Nothing
haven't
so
spent
far.
any
Nothing in
this year.
2020.
So-
I recall this was a late expenditure. That's all.
Was a what? I'm sorry?
It's a later expenditure.
It is a
in
late
the year,
expenditure.
so.
It is, but if you look at the history of it, over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the average has been $3,000. A little over $3,000.
So I'll make a motion to lower the 391 line item to 3,000, the 610 line item to 750, and approve the conservation budget for $6,480.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
second that.
You'll second that? All right, is there any further discussion? All right, voice vote, please.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh my
and
God.
that,
Actually, you're on the conservation, right, Mr. Lynn?
I know. All right, so our
Can I ask
last,
you a question before we'll
sure,
start?
sure, yeah.
Is there really an opening on the Conservation Commission? Because that was asked today.
I think there has been an opening.
Because there's someone that sent me an email saying they were interested, but they thought that the notice was old, so they weren't sure if it was right.
All right,
On the actual commission itself? you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think there's been an opening for a while.
I
All right,
would've asked-
so
I
our
would've asked
last-
John in person, but he's not here in person.
All
so.
right, well, our last budget, we still have some more bunch of stuff to go through, guys. So our last budget is the library budget, and I believe you have a copy of that was put into your folder. It is a level-funded budget. Any questions, concerns, issues? I think the library is making up about $9,000 of it. Questions, comments? Go ahead. Did you want to say something, John?
No, it's level. I think we should just keep it.
All right, you want to put a motion on the floor for that, then?
Well, I don't have all the
Oh, all right.
paperwork.
All right, okay, yeah, that's right, you don't have this paper, sorry.
Yeah, and I was looking at the actual so far, and it comes out about right for the number of months into the year, so things all seem to be in line.
You want a motion?
I'll make a motion
All
to
right.
approve the library budget for, where is that?
$599, $174.
$5,999, $174.
Second the motion.
All right, voice vote, please.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so the only budget we need to approve is our water budget, which we'll be discussing on Monday, and our solid waste collection. And after we get all of that done, We will reapprove all these numbers, and I'm hoping to get this to the Budget Committee by November 2nd at the latest. So thank you for all your work, gentlemen. I appreciate that. And Greg, I'll probably be emailing you tomorrow for all of these budget changes. Go ahead, Mark.
Something that I'll be bringing up in my town manager's report, if you had a chance to read it, is I would like to have you consider revisiting the legal budget. What has happened since August 19th has been a extraordinary amount of 91A requests from one individual. And Beth, can you show them the folder visually? You don't have to look at the folder, but if that's got a folder there that's full, that's just been 2 months worth of requests from one person. And it has incurred legal expenses because of what this individual is doing to the town, besides what we believe to be intentionally trying to disrupt the town normal business. So at the rate that we're going to have to pay legal fees for this one person, I've calculated out that we should increase the legal budget by $16,000 if this person were to continue this frivolous 91A request, going forward for the whole year. I know the chairman is aware of this, and if the rest of the board wasn't aware of it, you need to be aware of it. The courts have ruled that the responsibility is on the towns to provide this information. And, in the spirit of 91A, we have been. But this one individual has been making things so difficult that this person would consume Beth's time nearly every day. When she returns one request for information to the individual, she gets 2 more. This has just grown exponentially. Beth's there, she knows about it, the chairman knows about it. So I'm just bringing it up to you. We need to add $16,000 to the legal budget at this point in time for next year with this activity, or if you have another solution.
Well, I would also like to mention that this particular individual filed a 91A request to request my personal property tax records. And I'm very confused by that because that's a matter of public record. And it's all you have to do is go online and find out what I'm paying and how long I've paid it and whatever. So this is really an abuse of our employees' time. And it also incurs extra legal fees. So when the taxpayers see this budget, and they want to know why it's so high, that may be one of the answers. So if you don't mind, I'm going to wait. Greg is indisposed at this point, so I'm going to table that for right now, and we can come back and vote on that until he gets back, if you're okay with that. And go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I read the attorney's responses today that you sent, and I'd have to agree with you, but if this doesn't go any further, will you still need those funds? That's kind of my question. Or is this just in case it happens further, goes further?
Did you hear that, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, basically, we've been incurring approximately $1,500 a month in legal fees. I understand your question. I can't predict what this person's going to do or not do. I can't predict that the person won't increase what he's doing. So I certainly can't predict that he'll stop doing it or that he'll just do it at the rate he's doing it now. It seems to be increasing in frequency.
So while you were out, we were discussing increasing the legal budget by $16,000, Mark? Is that what you wanted?
Yes, that's what he said.
That's based on the current amount of legal expenses we're incurring every month. It would come out on a straight line to about $16,000.
We're looking at an $81,000 adjustment.
Oh, 16,000.
Yeah, so it's $81,000.
It would be increase the legal budget to 81,000 from the
65, right.
I had decreased it by 10 based on the trend we were having, but this is a new trend we're having.
So does someone want to?
So the new number is what?
The new number's 81,000.
Even.
even,
I'll
right?
make a motion to change the legal budget to 81,000.
Second the motion.
All right. If there's no further discussion, may I have a voice vote?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay.
And if we don't need it, it'll go right back in the fund.
It'll go into the unassigned fund balance, right? So Greg, I'm going to email you tomorrow with the numbers that I have, because I always mess them up, and you can make sure I'm doing the right thing, and we'll just hold off on the solid waste collection and the water budget, and hopefully we'll be good for next week on that. All right? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so town manager's report is next, and it's 9:30, so can you bullet it for me, Mr. Town Manager? I didn't hear a yes.
I'm
on
starting
that.
to get the feeling you really don't like my town manager.
No, I love your reports, but I also love my beauty sleep, too.
It really
Okay,
shortened.
I'll make
You
it
guys are
quick.
home.
The-
You might be in your pajamas for all we know, but we have to actually go home and,
These things are really short compared to what they used to be.
So the LED lighting has been canceled, and I was informed today it's going to start as soon as tomorrow with somebody coming in, and they're going to do it either this week or next week. The sale of town-owned property from Garden Ave a while ago, we deposited $34,000 into Rockingham County Superior Court, and we're getting information back. It looks like we're going to be receiving the remaining funds, which is $34,000. Yeah, so that would be just unanticipated revenue for the town in 2020. I closed on the property. That is, I executed the transfer of real estate to the town for the East Road Pump House, and that's been recorded. We received the deed. We received the title insurance with a warranty deed. So we need to add that property to our inventory, which we're in the process of doing. But that was something we expected to do. And I do have to tell you that we received such great cooperation from Wanda and Neil Kelly, who sold us this property. And at
Yeah.
some point, I'd like to recognize them at some future meeting.
absolutely.
The water project at the tank has moved along well, and DNN tank is pretty much wrapped up. And now they're constructing the 12-inch line to the road, and it will be connected up with Felice, who's coming up the road. And we're working on getting them water to the tank so they can do their testing. So both are working towards meeting each other out by the road, and we're trying to get all that testing in before the cold weather comes in.
Mark, may I just interrupt your train of thought there, because Dee Felice had requested to work on November 11th, which is Veterans Day, and I believe they're not allowed to work on state roads, but we can give them
Yes.
permission to work off-site, and we have to take a formal vote on that. So would you mind if I kind of interjected and took a vote for that to allow them to do that?
Sure, and specifically, they asked to work on the town road, Hale Spring Road, to do some lateral connections. So they would really have minimal impact on the town on Veterans Day to do that. They are trying to make up some difficult things that happened in their schedule. So I want to let you know that when they hit the intersection of Palmer, Smith Corner Road, Sweet Hill, and Hale Spring, that four-way intersection, beneath the ground were some unmarked utilities that they just spent an extra day or two there trying to get past and get under and get over. The second thing they ran into was a delay from Consolidated Communications that had previously arranged for them to be there to stabilize poles so they could do some digging, because Consolidated get called away for some high wind events. So this is just a contractor trying to make up some losses that they sustained, and they're willing to work on a holiday, albeit Veterans Day, but have minimal impact on the town. So yes, if I can advocate for you to approve that for them, I think that it would go a long way for the contractor, who's doing a very good job.
Absolutely, and this is, again, at no cost to the taxpayer, so I want to make
Correct.
sure everybody knows that.
Correct.
What was the utility that was unmarked? By curiosity.
They were concrete encased old utility lines, but they weren't marked. And there is a live line, copper line, that goes through that intersection that goes off to Newton that is still in service. So it was a very delicate thing trying to figure out which ones were actually live and which ones were vacated. But they had to go over, under, and through some of them. And the utilities did not have a muck. They ran into things that were they were totally unaware of.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the working on Veterans Day on
November 11th.
Hill Spring, on
Yep.
November 11th.
For DeFelice, okay,
Second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes?
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so you can let the guys know they're all set to work on November 11th, Mark, thank you.
I will. So continuing on, I've signed all the necessary permits for the water line construction to, over in Atkinson, because we are the owner of the pipes going in another town, until such time as we transfer that ownership over to Hampstead Area Water Company after they're in. So I had to be the applicant to sign all that.
Right.
And right now, New Hampshire DES is reviewing all of the wetlands permit applications and reviewing a mitigation plan for the East Road Pump House. We're having bi-weekly meetings, that is every other Thursday at the Public Works Garage. Usually the first one's at 9 o'clock and the second one's at 10 o'clock. So we're going to continue to do that, and then eventually we'll probably have a third meeting or a fourth meeting, depending on how the water project moves along. Public Works Garage, a lot of work to the exterior, expanding the parking lot. And the piles have been removed, the gravel's been hauled in and compacted, the grading has been finished, and they're gonna start paving tomorrow. All the prep work has been done. So they're gonna be paving there Tuesday and Wednesday. The salt shed interior is all set to be paved as well. And I've been in touch with the painting contractor for the options on the interior to be coated with a product to prevent the salt from corroding the inside of the building. Then the electrical contractor will come in to install the interior and exterior lighting, and the custom barn doors are being manufactured by the contractor right now. The footbridge has been installed, and the contractor is coming to finish that the end of this week with the railings and all the decking, and to make that crossing aesthetically pleasing and safe. The inside building exhaust fan is under construction right now with the contractor, and it's going to take a week to put in, but the goal is to have that up and running for the election, and we'll bring the electrical contractor in to hook that up electrically. Also met with Dean and a vendor to tell them about the permanent equipment that we want to install in the Public Works Garage for future meetings, events, in the February 2021 deliberative session. And we're also asking for other estimates consistent with our purchasing policy. I've hired an interim building safety official to perform the functions of the job. His name's Peter Blanchett, and he'll be doing the permitting, the code enforcement, and the zoning issues. And I've asked him for recommendations to review the status of the policies and procedures and all the permitting and all of the recommendations that he can give us to make the building department more efficient. I've made a conditional offer for a building maintenance supervisor, and if the background, medical, and physical is all good, that person will be on board for November 2nd, just in time for the elections to help out. The public safety radio communications project, which was a project that actually started in 2013, and we're in the third phase now. And we have information now going back 7 years so that we can understand it better. Quite frankly, I didn't understand what happened with phase 1 and phase 2, and I'm sort of involved with phase 3. But Greg and I are going to be coming to the board with a recommendation to correct something that we already did. What we want to do is we want to actually use the funds in the capital reserve fund for the previously approved improvements to the radio system. And then we want you to reverse or cancel your previous vote to take the money from the contingency fund, so that basically the contingency fund would go back to, that you really haven't used anything. I'm not sure if there was anything else besides
No, that was it.
either 34 or 43,000 for this.
Okay.
So we're looking to use capital reserve funds and restore the contingency funds at this point in time. But
Okay,
we'll be
Mark,
coming to you
I'm
with a
gonna
recommendation in writing.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you again because Jay had a question for you.
Yep.
Hey, Mark, just a question on the interim building inspector. So you have an interim, does that mean you're gonna be looking for a full-time, or is this a interim to permanent position kind of thing?
Well, what I told him is, quite frankly, that we wanted to observe him and see his capabilities and see if we like him and he can do the same with us. So I told him that we'd be looking at a 6-month interim position so that we could both see if we were a good fit for each other.
Thank you.
And if it's a good fit, then my plan would be to keep him, keep him employed and make him permanent. Okay. Greg and I had a meeting today with Gene Forbes and Keith Pratt in anticipation of bringing to the board more information and in a collaborative way to the board to make a decision on the 2021 Water Department budget. So we worked on that today. We have a lot of good direction, and we'll be bringing that to you at your next meeting. There was a water break on Chadwick Ave on Thursday night. Luckily, there wasn't any users other than one building that had full pressure in their sprinkler system. So we were able to isolate it, shut it off for the weekend. And Hampstead Area Water Company came today and they fixed it. They excavated, they found the leak, they found the broken pipe. They fixed the pipe, but the road significantly collapsed. And we're going to have a paving company come in to really cut the road back and fix the washed out areas under the pavement there. So I'll be working on that, but they came in and fixed it today. That break cost us almost $9,000 just for one break. So I think the trend is for every water break, you can anticipate, that was an 8-inch line, you can anticipate about $9,000 to $10,000 for each water break that we get. Luckily, we don't get too many. Since I've been here, we've only had a few. So we don't know why it happened, but they told us that the water pipes were in very good shape for the age of them, but they still can't explain why it actually broke in that spot there. The fire department was doing some training in another part of town. They do say that there's this thing called a hammer that can happen in the system, and it's just the surge of water that can create a hammer effect, and it can seek out the weakest places in the system, and that could have happened, because it did happen during the time of the fire department doing some training. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that was one thing we were looking for the cause, because we couldn't figure out why it would have broken that particular place. Greg and I continue to work on the 2020 budget. As you know, the CIP first meeting was canceled, so we'll be having that this week. The park construction has all but been completed. They hydroseeded, and I don't know if you've had a chance to go up there, but it looks really good. And also, they paved Cowley's Way today, or yesterday. They recently did it. And they're getting ready to start the safety complex road extension. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Any questions, guys? No? All right.
Mark, are we putting LED lights in the salt shed?
I didn't make any decisions one way or the other. The decision is, do we spend the money for the LED or not? With the solar panels coming online, if the board wants to take a consensus, you can give me a consensus right now if you want to put LED in there. There's going to be minimum amount of lighting inside and outside the building, but I'll follow whatever direction the board wants.
Is there a considerable cost difference?
Well, it's about 3 times the cost of a regular light, maybe even 4 times.
Okay. But if we do put solar panels in, we're going to want to connect those that lighting to the solar panels.
That would be all. The whole complex will be on one circuit, if you will. The lights in the salt shed will be powered from the main panel in the highway garage. The thought being that with the solar panels would go back into the main panel, so that everything on that site would be powered by the solar panels.
Okay. You want to wait on that?
Yeah, it doesn't change the wiring.
All right, okay. All right, thank you, Mark, appreciate that.
Okay.
Just two quickie things on action item reviews. I had spoken with Jay.
The question?
If the board wanted to have a consensus to do with LED lightings, and Greg just said, let's wait to find out if we're getting solar panels on it.
I think that's, whether you go solar or not, LED lighting is still efficient as far as power usage. It's a no-brainer.
Well, do you
anyway.
want to do a consensus to
The
do that?
difference is if you get solar or not.
Do you want a consensus to go with LED?
Do we have the money to do that? Do we have the cost in the budget?
Well, it's in the,
It's in the.
Do we have the money inside of the budget for the salt shed to cover that expense?
I'm gonna say that I can make it happen, but it's a very tight budget. So, something else might have to not be done, but, I find it's very expensive to put in these energy efficient things. I'm not against doing it, but it costs more money. I don't have a quote in front of me, but if a normal lighting set of lights in the installation would be, $5,000, 5,000 could turn into 15 or 20,000.
I say, you're gonna use more power, then you're gonna be replacing bulbs, then you're gonna have to be going up to them to do the replacement with the
Well,
labor.
why don't we just wait on this, because he's not going to be doing this tomorrow, so let's just hold off on this until we get a little bit more information, then we can do that. And I'm with you on the LED lighting, but it needs to be cost-effective.
Yep.
All right, so on action item lists, I started to say, I asked Jay, or Jay offered to help with the appreciation for the Selectmen plaque, and so I'm turning that over to him and to Greg, and he was very appropriate by saying we should probably do this in the summer of 2021 when the water's being turned on. So the to be determined is going to be summer 2021, and it's going to be Jay DeRoche and Greg doing that. And then the only other thing I wanted to know is, have you reached out to Knutson about the house numbers and businesses, the numbers on that? All right, when do you think you're going to be able to do that? Can you do that by the end of the year, do you think?
Oh, definitely, I just have to meet up with them.
All right, okay, so I'm going to put 12/20/20 on that, so we can put that to bed by the end of the year. Okay, any other business you guys have? Go ahead, Jay.
I do. It came up in Chief Knutson's presentation tonight about the response times and that training room they have to go around that. Is there something we can do about opening that up and allowing them to use that as a pass-through, Mark?
Well, yes, there is something, and I did take note. So what I will do effective tomorrow is I will make sure that those doors are unlocked so that when they come from that end of the building, they can cut through that room. So that's easy enough to keep it unlocked so that they can take a shortcut through. But he does bring up an excellent point on the design of the building. They put the overnight accommodations the farthest away from the apparatus bay.
Yeah, I know,
And,
not good planning.
When you paid an architect $750,000 to design a public safety complex, you would think that they would have put some thought into where they put the overnight for that exact reason, So, I know the ship has sailed and it's water over the dam, but, he brings up that excellent point too. Who the heck ever designs a building to have the people the farthest away from the apparatus base? But that's what we're stuck with.
Yeah, there was a lot of things with that building. Like, who
Yeah,
would put a
well,
brand-new building with fluorescent lights in
I
it?
know. See, we should have hired you a year before we actually did, and we wouldn't have any of these problems, but, oh well.
Thank you, Mark.
I'd make them sleep in the trucks to decrease their response time completely.
All right, that's enough. All right, now I completely lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Greg, while I collect my
Had a
thoughts.
question since the chief was here on item number 6. Has that been passed over to the fire department?
You mean the action item thing?
Yeah, is that what it is? Basically, we're asking them to take that over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Julian has to meet with him to create an ordinance.
I'll contact them.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Anything else? You have a bunch of papers in your folders. I'm just going to go over them really quick. Other business. couple of letters from citizens regarding recycling. I did reach out to a couple of them by email, and I do have some solutions that I'm bringing to the board hopefully next week if they give me some more numbers on it. You also have in your package the legal response for the right-to-know requests. Also, JRM, there's a letter in there from JRM, and I am actually meeting with their consultant on Wednesday to kind of discuss some of our reasoning as to why we are proceeding in the direction that we're proceeding. There's also a well testing event that is, I believe it's on the website, and so you can get your water tested for really cheap money, and I believe the stuff is set up in front of Town Hall. And the last thing that we have is the Soul Rock Coalition. You recall, they came last year and did a citizen's petition to request funding. I think I'd like to discuss this a little bit in more detail when our warrant discussion comes up. So that's something for you guys to look at as well.
Are there any opinion from our,
No, she did not, she didn't give an opinion. I have some, of course.
I'm just saying,
She
she
did
usually
say she
vets
has
our-
not
vets these
received the
people.
finances, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm
Julie.
just saying, she usually vets these people, and we rely on her for her opinion.
Yes, and I did have an email correspondence back and forth with her, and she did recommend that we put it up for warrant, but go
So
ahead,
I had a
Greg.
conversation with her, and
Mm-hmm.
she basically said that she is still waiting for financials
Right.
and proof that they are actually providing a benefit
Exactly.
to the
Exactly.
Plaistow residents. And so from that, I just said, okay, so you have everything that you need? And she says, yes, and I've basically reached out to request additional information, and I'm still waiting on that.
Yep.
So as far as I'm concerned, it's still
Up in the
pending.
air.
Up in the
And
air.
by the time we get to the warrant article discussion, if we don't have the paperwork, then we know what our decisions probably should be.
Right, and
Yep.
another thing you can do if you want to find out is reach out to the surrounding towns, because they did get on the budget for
Yes,
6 out of the 8 towns. and
yes,
So the other towns are supporting them, so you might get some good feedback from them as far as what they're doing for those towns.
right. That's a
Well,
good,
Laura
that's an
usually does
excellent
that.
point.
She'll check it all out.
That's an excellent point.
She's very
Okay.
thorough.
All right, so do we have, if there's no other business, you guys have all signed off on the signature folders. Do you guys want to do your selectmen's report? Yes, no? Go ahead, Jay.
Where I'll go. I had a rec meeting last Wednesday. As Mark mentioned, the committee recommended to move forward with potential hiring of a full-time rec director. We also discussed strategic planning. They voted to make a member alternate. Leah McKean is an alternate now. We also got a list of events that are coming up. So basically, right now, the Recreation Department is doing a bingo on Thursdays. It's a virtual bingo at 1 PM every Thursday. They're trying to garner some interest there. She's also doing a outdoor recess. It's on Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 4, so she's doing an organized recess outside and having activities for kids in school to get together after school gets out and do some activities at park.
Okay, it's at Park?
Yep.
Okay,
And that's Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 to 4. Even though Trick or Treat's not recreation sponsored, Trick or Treat is October 31st from 5 to 7 at this point. There is going to be a Halloween costume parade on Halloween between 1 and 4 at Park. They're asking people to register because they're set up in groups
right.
from, one group is 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 3 to, and so on. There's a pumpkin lighting contest. They're doing a photo submission for that. There's also an online candy dispenser contest this can all be found on the website and on the Facebook page, and also a coloring contest. The multi-purpose fields are being rented out, and those are starting to wrap up their seasons with lacrosse and flag football. As Mark mentioned, the softball field is complete, or almost complete. And I was out there and took a look at it. It looks excellent.
Does it good?
The pavilion's being used by Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts on their days for their meetings, so they're meeting out there. So there's a lot of activity going on at Park, which has been great.
It's excellent. Yeah.
They're starting the process of the trails, reaching out to the outdoor, the company that's
Appalachian,
helping with the
yeah.
trails. I'm trying to go quick, sorry.
No, that's all right.
They're going to continue outdoor recess in November and possibly a centerpiece making class. And then also the yearly wreath making event that they do is being planned as well. And then planning for tree lighting and things for Christmas vacation. Obviously, it's a little different this year. So they're trying to work within those constraints.
Wow, tremendous amount of work and incredibly
Yeah.
creative.
So, and they're looking to do, a lot more activities throughout the year, so.
Good.
I just wanted to give Mark kudos on, I drove over to the highway department this weekend, and it looks excellent over there.
I know,
People will be able to park and get in and out of there, so I think it's gonna make things really efficient and, much better, so thank you and good job on that.
Yes. I think he was actually one of the excavators personally that did that too, so yeah. All right, Craig, do you have something?
So I attended the planning board meeting. It was a very good meeting. They covered a lot of material, but there was a very informative discussion that John Cashel gave about mixed use, commercial and commercial zoning for Route 125. And it would basically allow a contractor to come into the planning board and propose a mixed development where you'd have commercial, residential, and possibly recreational all together in this one development. And it would basically be the preview of the planning board, not the zoning board, to approve this. So basically, it would change the C1 zone from purely commercial to the possibility of having mixed. So it was very interesting, and it's supposed to encourage development and encourage better services for towns. And there's a lot of safeguards on it. One thing they have requires a supermajority, so it would be 4 votes on the planning board to approve any recommended use. So that was really, really interesting. I've been trying to find out what planning was done, what financial planning was done to justify $68,000 to buy solar panels. And what I have found is there was no planning. There was no financial analysis, was no break-even analysis. And when I contacted Tim, he basically said, well, we just figured we'd spend some money and see how it went. That's, as a taxpayer and as a person that has supported finance for most of my financial career, that was a little disheartening to hear that. So what I've done is I've asked a number of people within the town. I've talked with Greg Colby, and I had a conversation with Susan Weston, and she is going to collect the usage in kilowatt hours and the actual cost for electric power for all the buildings within the town for a whole year. This will allow us to understand what are we actually paying and what are we actually using. And then the second piece is I was out at the salt shed with Mark, and I was asking him, what is the area of the salt shed? And it turns out the estimate is about 4,000 feet. So that could support somewhere in the vicinity of 250 panels if we really wanted to go that far. So the next thing is to try to find out, and hopefully I'll call, is it Henry? It's Henry, right?
Herndon, yes.
Henry. I'll call Henry and try to find out where do we go to get prices? Where do we go to get a realization of how much does a paneling supposed to cost? So how much is a project like this supposed to cost? And what is it involved? I did do some research in the New Hampshire Municipality Association, and they have wrote a very nice article about something called net metering, which residential owners do, and it allows them to get a credit for any energy they produce with their solar panels, and then they can then use that to offset their electric bill. In a municipality, there's something called municipal net metering, and what that allows you to do is to basically produce power from one building in the town and put that credit on any building electric costs on the town. So there's some more research I need to do, and whatever I get, I told Tim that I would share it with him and his committee, but I'd just like to find out what is our break-even point, what is the point that we're looking to do this. And then lastly, I was at the parking garage, and again, I was very, very impressed with the job that both Greg and our town manager has accomplished. It's phenomenal. What a tremendous difference. And I'm really hoping that we will have the capacity and we will have the egress to be able to handle our voters in a much, much better way than we did last time.
Absolutely. I think Jay had a question for you.
No, I was going to let him finish. I misspoke. I got to correct something.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
If you're done.
No, I'm done, yeah.
Just the outdoor recess was at Ingalls Terrace, not at Park.
Oh, at Ingalls, all right, okay.
Sorry about that.
All righty. So, Julian, you have anything for us?
Yeah, I went to a Rockingham Planning Commission meeting. They just did basically voting on funding for the 10-year projects, et cetera. I actually, first time I voted no on a project. Because I didn't think that it was a little misproportional about spending $500,000 on rail trails on the beach versus other projects. I understand economic development and all that, but we are a county, not a certain seacoast. But anyway, but that was the exception.
Okay.
I'll have to defend Tim Moore a little bit. I think he does understand net metering and everything. We've had these discussions, and years ago, we did get a full breakdown of all the electric bills in town. But that was quite a long time ago, so maybe his memory failed him. So we did do that, find how much
good to have
electricity the
an
town
update.
used. We did that years ago.
Good to have an update, too.
Yeah, I don't even know why that information is anymore, but we did do that years ago. One disappointment I had was I was hoping to get into the membership for the clean energy this month, because what they do, and we had problems also at the meeting, is we're trying to do a CIP, a long-term planning for energy, yet we find that the energy market has become so complex with so many options that we really needed experience from a larger organization that could give us some guidance without us working in a vacuum. When you work in a vacuum, you make poor decisions. Just like a town, if someone else is doing something good in another town, and you don't look at what they did, you lose opportunities for your own town, because maybe they're doing something better or worse than you're doing, and you need to look at the big picture. But working in a vacuum is tough, and we're at the point where there's so many options, we really needed outside recommendations. I can't keep calling Mr. Herndon up for free and say, help us out with this, help us out with this. It's about being part of the membership, and he also can attend energy meetings, where maybe we can make some wise choices on what are the best options and which directions to go, or the combination of solar panel,
And that could definitely be a discussion, but as you understand, this is not the priority at this point in time in our season, and I'll be happy to bring them back in, but are there any other committees or meetings that you
It was
went
like $200
to?
membership to become part of the whole scheme
All right.
of all the towns that are members of it.
Did you attend anything else that you need to talk to us about?
No, that's good.
All right, and I am definitely not going to ask you anything, John, because we know you were laying out on the beach having boat drinks for 2 weeks, so we don't want to hear any of that. So if no one else has any other business, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 10:01. Thank you for your time and your patience. This was a very long meeting. We will be meeting on the 26th at 6:30 to discuss the water budget and any other little last-minute budgetary issues that we came up tonight. So thank all of you for waiting for all of this time, and I wish you all a good night.